Good evening, everybody. It's 5:30, so we might get started. This council meeting, if we can please start by standing and we'll do our acknowledgements. The City of Victor Harbor acknowledges the Ramangiri and the Ngarrindjeri people, traditional custodians of the land and surrounding waters, live and work. We acknowledge their deep connection to country and we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. This respect is extended to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across Australia. May be here today.
The City of Victor Harbor is committed to diversity, equity and inclusion. We respect people of all ages, abilities, genders, sexualities and religions, cultures and backgrounds.
We recognise the brave individuals who have served and continue to serve our nation. We remember those who have lost their lives and paid the ultimate sacrifice to our country.
Almighty God, we ask you to bless this council and allow it to be an agent of change to the people of this city and beyond. Direct and prosper its deliberations to the honouring of your name and the welfare of the people whom it serves. Amen.
Thank you very much. Please sit down. Can I please remind elected members of the requirements of disclosure in relation to conflict of interest, and the councillors declare any interest and provide full and accurate details of their relevant interest prior to the consideration of the item on the agenda. Can I also please remind you to speak clearly into the microphone? That's really important for the people that are viewing at home. We have had difficulty with the live streaming, and so the people at home will be receiving a different view than they normally receive. We've got the new live streaming camera there, that little one is our live streaming camera. However, there isn't any problem with the audio if you just make sure that you speak clearly into the microphone. There's lots of interesting things and we have got quite a full agenda tonight. So I'd ask the gallery to please be respectful and allow the councillors to think clearly and debate the issues that are on the agenda. It is very difficult for councillors to think clearly and to debate efficiently when there is disturbances from the gallery. So please be respectful. I know the gallery is always respectful. I'm just reminding you. And thank you very much for taking the time out of what I know is probably a very busy schedule for you all to come tonight and listen to the council meeting. And also to those people that are listening online via our live streaming, thank you very much for taking the time to be interested in the proceedings of council. There are no items adjourned or lying on the table. So we now move to item 5.1, which is minutes of the previous meeting. And the recommendation is that those minutes be confirmed as true and accurate. Do I have someone to move that way? Councillor Schofield, thank you. And do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Henderson, thank you very much. Do either of you want to speak to those minutes or have any questions? Does anybody have any questions or want to speak to the minutes? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? They're carried. Thank you very much. We do have two deputations tonight. The first one from the Newland Uniting Church and the second one from the Victor Harbor Sea Rescue Squadron. I'll ask Jeff Penhall, who is the chair of the Church Council, if he would like to come up and do his deputation. Thank you very much, Jeff. You have 10 minutes for your deputation, Jeff, and that includes any questions that the members may have for you. And because we have got such a big agenda tonight, I will need to keep it at that 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Moira and Madam Chair. I'd like to acknowledge elected members and members of the City of Victor Harbor administration. I'd like to present a delegation on behalf of the LAN program, and it should fit very well into our available time. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to bring a delegation forward on behalf of the Newland Church Council and the Live Arts at Newland program. Members of this council need no reminder from me about the challenges our state and this community has faced over the past 3 years. When we look back over the impact of COVID, of climate change, of bushfires and recent floods, and then add the economic pressures that flow from increased costs of fuel and energy, the social impact of an unjust war in Ukraine, and the desperate shortfalls in housing and access to health services, we realise, I'm sure, we could agree that our senses of well-being and stability have been significantly challenged. It was in that context in 2020, as COVID lockdowns were taking effect, that the idea of Live Arts at Newland as an ongoing service program be established at Newland to meet the changing needs of this community. Beginning with the commitment of the Newland Uniting Church Council to plan and support monthly concerts using the amazing asset and auditorium, which is the Newland Church building, circa 1927, with a seating capacity of over 400. The annual LAN report has been tabled. I refer you all, if I may, to the annual summary report of the LAN program for 2022, which was provided to the City of Victor Harbor administration in January, and as I understand, distributed to members of this council in the February papers. So I'll take it that members will at least have had some opportunity to familiarise with the details provided. That report covers the second year of continuous operation of the Live Arts at Newland program, produced under the artistic directorship of Mr. Trevor Fletcher. I trust that members found the 2002 report to be of interest and value and some quality, but I trust also that it also served to demonstrate that we have established in this town a sustainable and valuable live arts expression, open to all, and a program that continues to provide unique and accessible monthly entertainment for the well-being and mental health of the people of this community. Friends, LAN continues to provide opportunities for artistic expression and shared mental health, all of which is delivered on a very modest budget. The Memorandum of Agreement. As noted in the report, part of our supporting arrangement to date has included a Memorandum of Agreement, or an MOU in other words, spanning 2021 to 22, in which the City of Victor Harbor and the Council of Newland Church set out terms of mutual collaboration for sustaining and delivering the LAN program. That 2-year MOU has now expired. And so part of my purpose in being here tonight is to highlight and promote our objectives and commitment in seeking the establishment of a new and more effective agreement. The stewardship of the former MOA has been managed jointly by Mr. Graham Pathouse, Director for Community and Development, and for Newland by the Chair of the LAN Program Steering Committee, acting for the Newland Church Council. There can always be room for improvement, Madam Chair, but I believe both parties would agree that the MOA has served its initial intended purpose of keeping us in dialogue and on the same page in terms of mutual interest for this community and in terms of us being effective, focused and collaborative in our community as community partners. Now, as LAN enters its 3rd year of operation, the members of the Newland Church Council and the Program Steering Committee propose that it is now time to seek a new and more substantive MOA that brings our organisations into clearer and better defined collaborative relationship for the benefit of the people of this community. Our council chair, the Honourable John Dawkins, is presently interstate and thus unable to be present with us here tonight. John sends apologies and his greetings to this meeting. Madam Chair, the ageing volunteers of the Newland team are certainly not canvassing for more jobs, far from it, but they are very conscious of their capacity and influence as they seek to ensure that, by whatever means can be agreed on, this live arts program can be strengthened and sustained, thus ensuring it continues to be a live arts feature in which we can share in ownership and a worthy degree of satisfaction for public service well rendered. Friends, I have not come here tonight with a wish list of fix-it items. Absolutely not. That's not to say, however, that we do not have such a list, but that is a secondary concern and perhaps a topic for another time and place. But we are seeking support for a more substantive MOA. What I'm seeking this evening is the support and endorsement of this council for the development and actioning of a new and more substantive memorandum of agreement for live arts at Newland. One that better defines our partnership and one that is designed to facilitate a benefit where it is due, but also one that delivers on our common interests with equity to foster and deliver cost-effective, wholesome live arts entertainment with broad appeal and continuing high quality performances for the community. Madam Chair, it is not my place to preempt or articulate what approach council might take in determining the basis of a new agreement between this council and the Newland Church Council. But may I just say this, that in the view of the Newland Council, doing nothing in this regard would not be a wise or desirable response in the interests of either party. As a committed council, we are very clear about that. Today, in March 2023, we are no longer talking about a light bulb moment, a good idea that just might bring benefits for the greater good of our people. Not at all. What we are talking about is a proven product and a sustainable and worthy contribution to the life of this community, delivered at very low cost. It is my hope, therefore, that this council will see fit to express renewed and ongoing support for this program through the establishment of a new and functional memorandum, one which is objective with real substance and which serves both parties well in the delivery of real and measurable benefits to the South Coast community, which we all seek to serve and strengthen. The Council of Newland Church, with leadership under John Dawkins and members of the Program Steering Committee, stand ready to engage in that dialogue, and I recommend the proposal to members of this council that a new and effective 2-year MOA be determined and ratified as soon as possible in support of the LAN program. I would like to express my appreciation to members of this council for your time in receiving this delegation this evening and for your kind consideration. In particular, my thanks are due to Mayor Dr. Moira Jenkins for allowing me to make this presentation here tonight. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Penhall. We've got enough time for a couple of questions if anybody has any questions, and then what I might do is see, with your permission, council members, go to item 10.5, which is on page 124 of your agendas, to address the Live Arts at Newland report and the memorandum of understanding. Do you have any questions for Mr. Penhall before we go to that item? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Jeff, for your presentation. Just want to look at the aspects of Newland. The building itself is a unique building in Victor Harbor because of its design as well as its acoustics. But the niche, you have a niche product that you present through the Arts Land program, don't you? So it's not just every type of arts, but it's just a unique niche type art process. And so how would you see council trying to develop that and advertising it and providing more support in that space?
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. I think when we say a unique niche, it's a very broad spectrum that we cover, a broad genre, with the aim that we try to have something in our annual program that appeals to most people. We certainly do have a regular following of some 80 odd people that predictably turn up month by month, and for them, their response to us is, please don't stop doing what you're doing. Then there will be some flexible number of 30 to 40, varying on who's performing and what style of music it might be, that will swell the numbers according. So if we've got Keith Conlon and the Jazz Trio, very clearly that's going to go to perhaps 180 people.
Thank you, Mr. Penhall. Members, can we move to item 10.5? Are you happy to do that? Can I have a show of hands if you're happy to do that? Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Penhall. The recommendation in 10.5 is firstly that Council receive and note the program report as provided, and the second recommendation, and I will do this on block, that Council authorise the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate and execute a memorandum of agreement renewal. Can I have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Seconded, Councillor Burns. Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Look, I do support this. I think it's a good opportunity gained, showing a organisation, a group within our town who's willing to put their premises out to the community in the way of arts and culture. And I think that's something that we are pushing very hard in our council, is to expand that program throughout the community for the wellbeing and benefit that it does provide. So I just have one question of the CEO. Will the negotiated MOU come back for council for ratification?
Through the Mayor, with the recommendations that currently exists, no, but I can if that's the preference of the members. So the recommendation is that you give me the delegations to actually execute it based upon the principles that are already in place with no additional budgetary expenses. But if preference is for the chamber that I bring it back to the chamber, I'm happy to alter that recommendation, or you would need to seek to alter it, but you've just moved.
Yes, look, I think just for our purpose of knowledge and information is what's in the MOU as to how it's written, and ensuring that, you know, everyone has a fair deal. So I'm quite happy to do a variation to have the MOU brought back to chamber for noting.
Are you happy with that variation, Councillor Burns? You are? So I'll just wait for Katie to add that to the recommendation. Councillor Burns, do you want to speak to the motion?
Only just to say that I found the report really good. I found the presentation excellent, and I also agree with Councillor Kemp that they add a lot of value to the wellbeing of the community. So I'm supporting the motion.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to the motion? Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Just a question, because I wasn't quite clear on Councillor Kemp's intention, whether it's for the CEO to execute and just to come back for noting, or whether it's to come back for formal endorsement.
Endorsement, Councillor Kemp.
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Mann. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. And yes, arts and culture is very important in our community, and I commend the council for supporting this resolution and for supporting live arts at Newland. I think it's a fantastic project and partnership. We now go back to deputations, and we have a deputation from the Victor Harbor Sea Rescue Squadron. Michael Rosier, who is the Commodore, is going to speak to us. Councillor Kemp, you may like to show Mr. Rosier how to turn the microphone on, if you don't mind. Thank you. And if you can speak directly into the microphone, Mr. Rosier, so that people on our live streaming can hear you. You have 10 minutes for your presentation, which also will include questions from the floor. And then with permission of the council, we'll move straight to that item that's in our agenda so that you don't have to hang around for it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to just give a bit of background in relation to Sea Rescue in Victor Harbor. We are a member of the statewide volunteer marine rescue organisation, which also includes the State Emergency Service. The area covered extends from just east of Kangaroo Island, right the way across the coast down to the south of the Murray Mouth, and includes Lake Alexandrina, Lake Albert and the Coorong. As you can see, it's quite a big area. We are actually the busiest volunteer marine rescue unit in the state, averaging at least one rescue a week throughout the year. We are all volunteers, but a mix of employed and retired people. We don't discriminate, we rescue anyone. Swimmers, kayakers, people in inflatable toys blown out to sea, and that's happened quite a few times, as well as boats in trouble. We also provide safety boats for any on-water events, that particularly the ones the council support. Our training is state mandated, and we have to comply with accredited training systems. The background to the ramp passes, which is, I think, the agenda item, this original issue was spontaneously from the council in recognition of our contribution to safety at sea around Victor Harbor. We didn't actually ask for them, but we're very grateful. It also recognised the voluntary nature of our rescue work. We currently have 4 boats ranging in size from our 9-metre BH65, which is currently stored in a shed on Maud Street, which, as you can appreciate, is not exactly close to the water. So we do have a bit of fun there. In addition, we can call on 12 additional so-called private boats, which are privately owned, but they are accredited for use as sea rescue vessels. Every one of our 4 boats is built to survey requirements, which therefore is much stronger than most recreational boats are built. And we're annually audited by South Australian Police Water Operations. So we have to comply with all of their requirements as well. Every one of our private boats must be skippered by a trained sea rescue skipper, or one must be on board when they're deployed on a search or rescue. When a call comes in, we typically call out 2 boats. From Victor Harbor, it would be a 6.5, which is the 9-metre boat, and another one which is called Sea Legs, which you may or may not, has its own wheels that come down, and you can drive it straight over the beach and into the sea. The method then is that usually Sea Legs goes first because it can be deployed much quicker, and it actually has saved more lives than all the other boats put together. The 6.5 will have to then be crewed and taken to the Encounter Bay ramp before it can be launched and get underway. We use specially trained and accredited ramp marshals to make sure they can actually guide the 18-metre brig back down onto the ramp. So if any of you have been to the Encounter Bay boat ramp, you'll know that that's actually quite a tricky procedure because there's not a huge amount of room there. We also, when rescues are called out during the week, we're somewhat limited to people who can actually volunteer, because the people who are fully employed typically are doing their day job and aren't able to get to us. If a major search is decreed by South Australian Police Water Operations, we will need to call on our private boats, and that's probably when they make most use of the passes. The other requirement we have is for parking of the 18-metre truck and trailer combination near the ramp. Obviously, it's not a good idea if you've got to send someone quite a long way off to find some parking and then come back and go out on the rescue boat. The space we would appear to be close to the de-rigging part of the parking area near the ramp, And that would be optimum for us because it then is a straight run through the parking area. Any of the other ones, it typically is too tight for our truck and trailer to get round by in front of the Whalers restaurant. So that's the information I wanted to impart to council. I hope that I'm now open for questions.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Koorimpa?
Thank you for your presentation. I thank you actually for saving me at one stage.
Oh, good.
And I can attest that you have a magnificent service. The one thing that I did note, and I spoke to one of your volunteers, was the period of time that it takes to get from Maud Street to the boat ramp. Now, when we're talking that seconds matter in a rescue, I guess the question I would ask, would it be more advantageous if your boat was already in the water? Like say in a marina?
Yes, either in the water or in a shed that can be launched directly into the water.
Right, okay. The other thing is it's really interesting that this is even a no-brainer that you guys would have passes, considering that, you are saving potentially lives. So I will definitely endorse this.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? And then we'll go to the item. Councillor Burns, have you got a specific question?
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's excellent. I have the privilege of chairing the boating work group and have some good insights into the fantastic work you guys do. My only comment was you've got a very modest proposal here. I thought it may have been missing a few zeros. But very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rossio. Can I please have a hands up from the elected members if you're happy to move to item 10.6, which is on page 151. Thank you very much. We'll move to that. I'm happy to do this on block if you are happy to do that on block, and I will take the recommendation as read, as you all have read the agenda. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schofield, and seconded Councillor Schiller. Do either of you want to speak to that? No. Does anybody want to speak to that? No. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Congratulations, Mr. Rossio. And I think that as councillors highlighted, this is a very extremely important service that you do. It is the busiest in the state, and I'd like to thank, on behalf of council, all of your members for the work that you do. We now move to questions from the gallery. We have a question from Tim Mitchell. Tim, you're here. Please ask your question.
My question was how many buskers permits for single artist performers were issued in each of the months, November, December, January, February?
The number of applications that have been received and approved by Customer Liaison team over the last 4 months in accordance with our street permit operating guidelines were November 0 applications received, 0 approved, December 2 received, 2 approved, January 1 received, 1 approved, and February 1 received and 1 approved. In addition, some buskers may have been granted permission to busk during the above months, having previously applied for a longer term permit. Buskers at specific events are not included in the above figures as they organise permission directly with the event organisers.
Thank you very much for the information. May I just take the opportunity to let
you can have a follow-up question, Mr. Mitchell.
I was just going to state my my support for the Convention Centre Bluff Marina development because I believe that will create employment for me as an artist.
Mr. Mitchell, this is not the time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We have a question from Luke Hosking. Luke, are you here?
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. I'm Luke Hosking, Master Mariner and local resident of Victor Harbour for the last 39 years, and respectfully ask Has there been any amendment made to the demographic quotas or specific methodology utilised in the community survey subsequent to its initial release before the council circulation of the survey to community through email on and around the 21st of March 23?
There's been no change to the demographic quotas or the survey methodology since the community satisfaction survey commenced in March 2023. The demographic quotas used for this project are based on the 2021 census data.
Thank you. And my second question, could you please provide a concise description of the procedure that the council adheres to with regard to notifying all its voting elected members of solicited and unsolicited proposals in order to ensure they are comprehensively informed about all issues relevant to the community and are able to effectively perform their duties as elected representatives of the community, including through change of elected members after elections?
Sure. I think you were previously emailed on the 21st of March 2023. All unsolicited proposals in relation follow the prescribed process outlined with the relevant documentation, being the unsolicited proposal policy and the unsolicited proposal guidelines. Both of them are available on our website if you or any member of the community want to have a look at them. And I think that they were emailed to you back in March.
No further questions. Thank you for your time. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hosking. And we have a third question from Andrew Robertson.
Thank you, Mayor. In planning the recent Victor Harbor Triathlon, no consideration or consultation was given to the impact of the race runners and supporters would have on the Granite Island penguin colony. Volunteer penguin monitors only found out about the race route a couple of hours before the event began and had to scramble to hide the burrows that contain molting adults and chicks. Yet again, the DEW, Department of Environment and Water, and the Council failed to consult with the Penguin Monitoring Group before organising an event. By the way, another fun run near the burrows has been approved by the Department of Environment and Water for May. There is no discernible management of Granite Island. Bikes are routinely taken to the island. There is no ranger presence on the island in the early evening. When the penguins return to feed chicks, there is shocking cruelty being committed on the shark population on the North Shore, and the dry zone is not being enforced. Over 2 years ago, the CEO stated she realised that the management arrangements of Granite Island by the owner, the Department of Environment and Water, was negatively impacting on Granite Island and the reputation and economy of Victor Harbor. The Department of Environment had a management committee for Granite Island, but the City of Victor Harbor was not on the committee. The Department of Environment is yet to deliver the proposed visitor experience plan or the penguin conservation plan and has recently downgraded its office in Victor Harbor. My question to the CEO is, when will the Department of Environment and Water be establishing a Granite Island Management Committee which will include the City of Victor Harbor?
Well, I'll take your question on notice, Mr. Robertson. We'll need to ask you that. Thank you. We have no petitions, but given that there's a number of people here tonight and also know a number of people online that are interested in the unsolicited proposal around the Bluff Marina, I just ask if the elected members would like to move to item 10.10 so that we can discuss that, get that out of the way, and then people can go home if they want to. So are you happy for me to move to 10.10?
I've got a question first.
Yes, your question.
We're talking about the Bluff Marina, and there's a budget allocation proposal in the proposed budget which addresses this issue, and how we can contextually address both of those within this particular motion. So the CEO might be able to help me here.
Do you want to answer that, Victoria?
If I may, through the Mayor, Councillor Schiller, I think you're able to deal with this matter in its on its own merit, and then you'll still be doing the discussion around the draft annual business plan and budget at 9.2. There's no harm in reiterating it twice within the council.
Okay, so we move to 10.10, unsolicited proposal, the Bluff Marina. You want to move that way, Councillor Henderson? Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Mann.
Sorry, Mayor Jenkins, I'd like to declare a general conflict of interest in relation to this matter, as my professional role gives rise to a perceived conflict, and I'll deal with this conflict by leaving the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Do I have a seconder for that motion, Councillor Schofield? Thank you.
Could I please have the motion fully read out so I can get the wording correct for this one, because it's very important.
Certainly. The motion is that Council decline to provide any further support, in principle or otherwise, for the Bluff Marina proposal submitted by Mr Mark Taplin under the Council's unsolicited proposal policy. Moved by Councillor Henderson and seconded by Councillor Schofield. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Henderson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The Bluff and its surrounding waters has significant heritage and cultural value to our Ngarrindjeri people. Its creation is depicted in the Ngarrindjeri dreaming story of Ngarrindjeri. And also, the whole of the Bluff is on our state heritage list because of its environmental and historical significance. Feedback from our Bluff Master Plan has already shown us overwhelmingly that our residents want the Bluff to remain as natural as possible. We, as a council, need to protect the environmental, recreation, tourism, heritage and cultural significance of the Bluff. I have spoken to dozens and dozens of residents, or rather they've actually spoken to me. They've approached me, and not one of the people I've spoken to supports this idea. In addition, I am not aware of any conversations the proponent has had with any of our local Ngarrindjeri people, even though there was advice from the state government that the proponent should talk to the Ngarrindjeri Aboriginal Corporation, NAC for short, the Raminjeri Heritage Association, and the original South Australian Tribes Indigenous Corporation. I've asked the proponent directly with which of these groups he's had conversations with, and I haven't had a reply. I have spoken to some local Raminjeri and Ngarrindjeri people, and I can tell you they do not want this development. It is a very significant cultural and heritage site for them. In addition, if we want to look at the other concepts, such as the convention centre, looking at a 1,000-person convention centre, if you're going to bring in that number of people for a convention or a symposium, a certain proportion of those people would be coming from interstate or even overseas. And I can tell you, having attended such things for the whole of my working life, people flying in for a convention or a symposium do not want to hire a car or hop on a bus and travel 1.5 or 2 hours from the airport for 2 or 3 days, and then hop on a bus to travel back to the airport. The people attending such things are at the top of their professions. They're very busy people. They want to fly into a convention, attend and get out as quickly as possible. They will not be bringing their families. They will not be lingering to have holidays. As I say, I've got experience of my whole working life in this area. And also in terms of jobs in the future, I can tell you that our Premier stated on Friday that the South Australian workforce is at full capacity. We do not have an unemployment. People may be looking to change their job, but everyone who wants to be employed is employed at this point in time. So where we'd get the additional workers from, I'm not sure. Where we'd get the tradies from, I'm not sure. And in terms of hospitality at the top end is rapidly moving into artificial intelligence and digital access. Such things as contactless check-in and check-out, contactless key to your room, sent automatically to your telephone, and basically the number of people employed in hospitality is diminishing rapidly. So there will not be many jobs in that space in the next 10 years. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Schofield, do you want to say anything?
I'm supporting this motion completely separately to Councillor Henderson. I don't believe that we have enough information to continue along this avenue at this particular time. In some ways, I believe that the project is good, but there's a lot about it that is uncertain, could have huge implications. And so that's the reason that I'm at this particular stage supporting the motion.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Burns, then Councillor Schiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm actually not supporting this motion because I'm struggling to understand how we can even get to the point of this motion where there hasn't been any public consultation yet. And I think it's actually important for development of this scale, especially if council have said that they support business development, to actually go out to the community, to actually allow them to review what's being proposed and to provide feedback, which I understand Mr. Taplin was after. He wasn't after money, he was purely after public consultation, and I think this is denying the community the opportunity to review and have a look at all the reports and all the information and provide feedback. Whether we as individuals and as councillors agree or disagree, we're here representing the broader community, and I think we need to do our job and actually allow the broader community to give us relative feedback.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller.
The wording that is placed in this does look like a final scenario for this particular development, and so I'm sort of not comfortable with the way it's been portrayed. I'm quite happy if we squash this, put this motion through, but I don't want that to be the end of the discussion, re the marina. Later on in the budget bids, we have a bid proposed for looking at whether we're going to look at the options for the community, whether they want public consultation, whether it be council being fully funding that or whether partially funding that. And I would like, although I will vote for this now, that we have the option that the community decide whether we should have that public consultation, and by taking that into our draft budget, they have the opportunity to say whether we should go forward with that consultation.
Thank you. I might just ask the CEO to respond to that in terms of that query, whether or not we're able to do that if this motion goes forward.
If I may, through the Mayor, and I do preface this, I did have a conversation with Councillor Schiller, and I think by you supporting the motion currently on the floor, Councillor Schiller, you wouldn't be able to achieve what you were looking to achieve. To explain to members, Councillor Schiller was looking at whether we include a provision in the draft 23-24 budget for the purposes of seeking some consultation about undertaking consultation, a provision of $30,000. But if you were to support this motion, Councillor Schiller, you can't go back and do that. So,
all right. So there's no way we can adjust the finality of this motion. So basically, if I think that we should be looking at that other option,
yeah.
I need
so
to
this current motion on the floor is stating that council declined to provide any further support in principle or otherwise for the Bluff Marina proposal submitted by Mr. Taplin under council's unsolicited proposal policy. And what you were looking to achieve was to have an allocation in the draft annual business plan budget, a provision of a set amount, which you were going to discuss for the purpose of further consideration. So supporting this, if you were to do that, you would not be able to do that.
I'll reiterate that I'll be voting against it and bringing this back up in the budget bids. And the reasoning why is that this will allow the community the opportunity to decide whether they want that consultation placed in the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Councillor Corimbo?
Yeah, I'm a little bit bewildered that we seem to be shutting down developments like this. This potentially could increase the GDP of our area. And I do understand that we do have a high level of employment, but what we do actually have is a high level of underemployment, especially in the regional areas. We are three quarters the average wage here in the Fleurieu compared to the rest of the state. This development represents potentially, and I'm sure there's a lot of hoops that have to be jumped through, but this development presents a position where council can generate money without going back to the ratepayers, which seems to be the MO of this council. So I will be voting against this, and I would like to see that the people of Victor Harbor do have an opportunity, like they should, to actually have a look at this proposal. And I would, definitely be voting against this. Thank you.
Councillor Kemp, do you want to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm voting against this motion due to a number of factors, and I too have done a lot of conventions through my time and travelled long distances to get to places. And when you've got a beautiful place like we sell ourselves to the world, why wouldn't we have a convention centre here and people come from around the world to see what we have to offer? I think that is a gem. I think we need to put it to our community because this will impact our community. I think our community has the right to have a say in this. This proposal here is about going to stage 2 of the unsolicited bid policy, where council looks at it and looks at it in principle to continue to do that. We'll always be sending a message to the development or investors around Australia or anywhere else in the world that we'll shut the door on your face because we don't like your idea, we don't think it's very good, so we're not going to look at it. One of the things through our economic development strategy, we talk about the facts that we have to inject some major development into this town if we want this town to grow and provide the services that we keep telling our community they need, or they keep telling us what we need to provide for them. So without major injection of development, this will never happen, and Victor Harbor will stay as it is, and that's fine. If that's what the community wants, then it will stay that way. But if we want this community to grow, to develop our economic development strategy and businesses and employment, have young families living here, not moving away, etc., we have to look at it in this context. And I think this is only a proposal that the government requires of Mr Taplin to have a public consultation undertaken to ensure the community is in favour of this type of development. And that's all this is about, really. But for council to shut the door on the developer who could actually inject a lot of money into this community for the well-being of it, that's what the community wants. But we need to ask our community. It's the decision of the community, not us. We're here to represent them where we can. So by putting it back to them, I think that's the best way we can get the best message out there, if it will happen or not happen, and the benefits are there. And I think when the community sees the amount of paperwork that's been developed through the proposal and what it covers environmentally and everything like that, well, people need to have a look at that and make a decision. And I think it's really not up to us to do that, except provide them the opportunity to do so. So I see this as very simplistic in the sense that let's have a look at it in the community's eye. I think the council should be still involved. If we're not, we're stupid, because I think we need to be out there communicating to the world that we're open for business, and we look at each development application as a separate case by case, and whether it works or doesn't work, whether our community wants it or not. But I think we need to have an open door policy about development, and I think we should continue with this unsolicited bid proposal to keep in contact with the developer to actually find out and maintain what's going on and what's happening. Now, again, it's really about looking at what is available, how it's going to impact, and those things will happen. And the government will, if we're going to fund this, will do all that process anyway. So it's just an idea, a concept that's brought here that what do we think about it? And I think if it works or doesn't work, I think it's back to the community to actually provide that. That's why I won't support this motion as it stands. I think council still needs to be involved, be part of it, be at the table talking with developers.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. This is a really important issue, so I'm just wondering, Councillor Quinton, if you'd like to add?
Thank you, Mayor. All I'd like to add is that I've been speaking to lots of people through my work about the proposal because it's obviously a hot topic, and the overwhelming message that I'm getting is that people that live in the Encounter Bay and surrounding regions seem to be against it. So that has swayed my opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, similar to Councillor Quinton there, those who I've spoken to who do live in the Encounter Bay area generally have been against it, and their concern is Encounter Bay is like a lovely getaway, like housing area at the moment, and they don't want to spoil that to make that a commercial space. In that sense as well, a convention centre, great idea to bring people into the community, but it would make more sense to be closer to the centre of town or bring people into an area where they can support other small businesses and not just draw them away from the town centre.
Thank you very much. Councillor Henderson, it's a debate. I think everybody's spoken.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, it's not council's role to go to public consultation on behalf of a private development. And this is state government land we're talking about, and so far the proponent hasn't received any written support from any of the state departments or ministers that he has approached about this development. It goes against our environmental management plan, our open space and recreation policy, and against our reconciliation action plan. This may be a good idea in its own right, but not at the Bluff.
Thank you very much. I now put it to the vote. All those in favour? And all those against? Thank you. And I think I'm captured with a casting vote. A casting vote's always quite difficult when it comes to something that is so highly debated and where emotions run very high. I've spoken to people who want this development, and I've also spoken to a number of people who do not want this development. Both of them are highly emotive about it. Both of them have things that I absolutely agree with. Both of them have things that I don't agree with. There's lots of misinformation that is going out around the community and about this. And I think that it would be easy, it would be very easy for me to vote to shut it down, and then that's finished. However, listening to all of you elected members, and I'd like to thank you for your very respectful debate. It has been respectful and very thought out. Because the community have become so invested in this over the last couple of weeks that Mr. Taplin has gone to the Advertiser and gone to the papers and gone to Facebook and YouTube about it, I think that they deserve to be able to have a more formal say. I think if I voted to decline any further support, the community who do support this proposal would be very angry. I think if I vote to against the recommendation, that will provide the community with the opportunity to actually have a consultation, which I hope will be done independently of the council and independently of Mr. Taplin, so we are able to capture a true community what the community truly feel about this, and at the end of it, do what the community say. And I think that that is the fairest thing that we can do. So I am going to be voting against this recommendation, and I'm hopeful that we can go out to community support, go out to community consultation rather, and judge very fairly without emotion being involved what the costs are going to be and whether the community will support that. So I am voting against the recommendation. And can I please have a division? All those for? And with a division, just for the new members, you are allowed, it does provide you with an opportunity to change your mind if you do want to change your mind. So all those for, we have Nick McKenzie, Michael Quinton, Carol Schofield and Councillor Henderson. And those against, Stuart, no, you can stay sitting if you're against. Stuart Burns, Carlos Karemba, David Kemp and Angela Schiller. And the Mayor moved the casting vote. The CEO has just asked whether or not I'd like her to forecast, to forecast another motion, because we don't have another motion in relation to this. So I will let her speak. She may have some advice for us.
Just noting Councillor Schiller's comments. No, Councillor Mann still has a conflict. We're still dealing with the same matter. Sorry. Councillor Schiller foreshadowed, or Councillor Kemp, just noting that this item still is in the agenda and currently the item is lost. You can either choose to foreshadow your motion now or wait until the budget discussions. Just wanting to clarify for members.
Basically, I suppose it's going to be a motion which is very similar to mostly Councillor Schiller's, but I guess I can put it at the same time as the budget deliberations and look at the two different motions and which one will be the best suited.
Thank you. So those people in the gallery who have been waiting for a decision about the Bluff Marina, if you want to go home? No. Oh, yes, but no, the decision in relation to this one. So now we are starting from the beginning, going through the agenda. Councillor Mann can probably come back in. All right, we now go to 9.1, which is the outstanding resolutions for March 2023. And the recommendation is that Council receive and note the report. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And do I have a seconder for receiving and noting that report? Thank you, Councillor Karemba. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that or have any questions? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just a question on the renaming of Kent Reserve. I know I've read the stuff, but this is not quite in line with the resolution. But I believe the two Rotary clubs of Victor Harbor wrote to Council requesting an opportunity to have a name change to something like Rotary Park or something. I know it's now been written a while ago. I'm just wondering whether that's going to be looked at or be involved in this type of discussions.
The original, that particular matter was actually a request, sorry, through the Mayor, I should have acknowledged that, was actually from a number of school children that actually wrote to the City of Victor Harbor about the renaming of Kent Reserve to Murwong as its main name. So that may be a different matter, but I'm happy to follow that up.
Yeah, it's my understanding the Rotary clubs wanted to look at naming the reserves the Rotary Park or something as an opportunity, as the investment in the Kent Reserve with so much from Rotary clubs already. So they said they wrote to Council about 12 months ago, but hadn't heard back.
Councillor Kemp, is this part of the outstanding resolutions?
Yeah, I thought I'd just tie it up with the renaming of that resolution, whether it could be incorporated in it, because you'll need to go back to the First Nations people to have that discussions.
I will take your comments on board. I'm not aware of the correspondence, but it may have been in my absence, so I will follow that for you.
Is there any further discussion or any questions relating to the outstanding resolutions March report? Councillor Schofield.
My question is very similar to Councillor Kemp's, because I'm looking here that there are 3 resolutions sitting here since 2020 in the naming of Kemp Reserve and also the bridge at Back Valley. So that's 2 years. Are we still waiting a reply from the Narrandjeri and Ramangeri people?
Through the Mayor, if I may, that's what I've tried to explain in my commentary, in that the Narrandjeri Aboriginal Corporation has been through a number of different changes in their membership, and it has been challenging, but I have actually met now since on my return with Mark Cummeltree, because it has taken some time, but I'm also aware that they have been through a number of different changes within their organisation as well. We've also raised it with MEPAC, which is our local Ramangeri organisation, but the resolutions of council are specific in that we are to engage with NAC, Narrandjeri Aboriginal Corporation. I'm just trying to cover all areas and make sure I come back with some information for council so we can move forward on these matters.
Are there any further questions in relation to the outstanding resolution? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 9.2, development of the draft annual business plan. Victoria, do you want to speak to this one?
Thank you, Mayor. If I may, I just want to remind members, so just be clear, this is not about adopting the budget. It's not about adopting it for the purposes of consultation. It's about adopting a draft for the purposes of me being able to build the annual business plan, which is the commentary around what we're going to do, why we're going to do it and how we're going to do it, so that when I do bring it back to the chamber for endorsement, that you have a fairly good picture about what you want to endorse for the purposes of consultation, because we then go out to our community and we gauge with our community that you've actually channeling those funds and resources into appropriate projects and areas, and we seek their feedback from the community, and then it will come back to council for endorsement. So I just want to make that clear. There's a little way to go, but it does give you that opportunity, because I know there has been discussions, even though I'm delegated the authority to draft a budget for you. A number of these items, we've had some workshops and there's been concern about, are we making decisions at workshops? This just gives me some further clarity about the direction I put our resources into to draft up the annual business plan. And at this point, you can pull things in or take things out, but it doesn't mean it's the last go.
Are you moving, Councillor Kemp, the first recommendation? Or have you got a question?
Mayor Jenkins, I do have a question.
Can you speak into your microphone, please?
I said, I'm sorry that I do have a question. To me, this sounds has changed from what we've done previous years in the way we do this process, because we've only had 2 workshops and we really haven't touched base with exactly what the capital and operating budgets are. To go into this process now is sort of seems to be setting in stone some processes which will be in place. So I'm not quite sure how later on, whether we hold special council meetings for about half a day to break down the budgets and redo it.
Through the Mayor, I don't envisage having a half-a-day workshop to break down the budget and redo it. This is about providing some clarity around some specific items. If you look through the council agenda, there is already an item in there about seeking consultation from the community on the hard waste collection about the options, and doing that as part of your consultation on the annual business plan and budget. Trying to channel our consultation or engagement with our community around this one document as opposed to a piecemeal approach is, I think, is better. And it's really just trying to find a little bit more clarity from the chamber, because we can keep drafting and it changes at workshops. I don't think that's the best way of doing it. This just gives me some more clarity.
We have First recommendation is that council provide approval for the development of the draft, and I note draft annual business plan in line with the draft budget provided at attachment A and B. Do I have someone to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And I've just.
Could I have a question, please?
Can you wait? Can you wait until we've got a mover and a seconder, Councillor Schiller, and then you can ask your question? Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Quinton. First of all, before I go to you, Councillor Schiller, Councillor Henderson or Councillor Quinton, do you want to speak to it? No, no. Councillor Schiller?
So this is allowing us to discuss the particular additional items that Mr. Kemp has put forward.
That is in recommendation 2.
Thank you.
So we have recommendation 1 on the table as a moved and seconded motion. Councillor Burns?
Yeah, I'd just like to talk to this. I am supportive of the development of the annual business plan, and I understand where the CEO is coming from. I would actually prefer that this gets deferred, because I don't believe there's been enough time with the workshops and the revision to be able to, in a couple of days, go through and understand everything to come back with any clarification or any changes we want. I also feel that if this is voted on, and to say that we can change it with a majority resolution by the chamber, I think is hard, because trying to get most people to agree rather than getting feedback for at least another final draft, be it by the next couple of weeks or by the next meeting, I think is a preferred option. That's just my preference.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mann?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, I guess a bit of background which may be helpful to other members. This isn't something, this type of recommendation, that we've previously done in the process. It's usually through the budget workshops, the many workshops we have on this, that we've developed this draft concept. My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, CEO, as to why this has come about, is based on some of the concerns at workshops from elected members around, are we deciding on things? Can we shape the budget this way? However, and this is, I would take as the administration's way of addressing those concerns. So the way that I look at it is we're pretty much giving the stamp, say, yep, keep working on this. It's only a draft. The things we put in tonight, we could pull out at the next workshop. It's just maybe a point in time where we're at now as to where those discussions are at, to address some of those concerns have been raised. So if that could provide some clarity.
Councillor Burns, clarification?
Yes, clarification. So am I correct in understanding that in a workshop we can make a suggestion about changes, as Councillor Mann just said, and it doesn't require a resolution of the chamber? Is that correct?
You can't make decisions in a workshop.
No, I
you can
understand
suggest
that.
changes, and then it will come back to the chamber for the resolution of the final budget
Okay.
for public consultation.
Okay. But at the moment, we can put in recommendations without going to a resolution, and then we get a final one to approve, which is what this is basically doing.
So just to provide some clarification, and thank you, Councillor Mann. So we're talking about 2 separate documents. So we have a budget, which is the dollar figures of your operating and your capital budget. I have a delegation to draft your budget. So I can gather the information I gather from the workshops and draft a budget. I also need to draft an annual business plan. That is quite a resource intensive document. And so what I'm just trying to do, because it has been based on the last comment that was made at the last workshop about, are we making decisions at the workshops? No, you can't make decisions at a workshop. But for me to draft the annual business plan with the detail that I need, it's better for me to have some clarity. Hence, I'm just emphasising this is still draft. It's draft budget, draft annual business plan. And again, giving an opportunity, if you're wanting to pull things in or put things in or take things out, you can do it by way of resolution. Just gives me a bit more clarity. But by no means are you at that end stage of adopting this budget, because you still need to go out to consultation with our community. But what we tend to go out to our community is with a full annual business plan document and a budget. And again, the council still, when they come to adopt it, can choose to remove things or put things in based on that community consultation.
Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. I'm talking to the first recommendation. It's my understanding, Council, as long as they adopt the annual business plan and budget by August, I believe that's correct. So we've got plenty of time. And since we can't make decisions at workshops, to bring this type of document into a busy, very large agenda tonight, which would go to midnight, I reckon. Who's in favour? No one? Okay. The point is that, you know, to make decisions now on the fly, I think we need to have a special council meeting or something where we can sit down and break it down and have a good discussion and make decisions, and it's set in there, and that will give you clarity and guidance around the draft plan. Now, I would imagine when you look at the draft plan from year to year, apart from the figures and some of what we're in the way of going to be delivering, you know, much won't change in some areas of the plan itself. So, look, I'll support it as a one-off stuff. I don't think it's the right way we're going about it. I think we need to have a bit less workshops. It's been presented. We know what's in there. We need to sit down and start making decisions and debating it in that forum, not so much a workshop where we can't make decisions. And so I think at this stage, I will support it, only because I think we'll get the process moving, but it'll be interesting to see what the future ones hold. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Karimba.
Thank you, Mayor. This is probably one of the most important documents that we're going to be working on as a council. I think it's very important that we give it the time and energy and the resources it requires. I'm just wondering, will there be sessions where we will be able to debate openly and honestly about matters within the budget?
Absolutely.
Through the Mayor, so members would have received quite a detailed framework for the preparation of the annual business plan and budget. We have given you clear timeframes and processes and decision points at which you need to go through that process. So it's not rushed at all. I think we've been quite clear in the steps that you need to take, and even at their workshops, they are for discussion and debate. It's just not around making formal decisions. As for tonight's meeting and the agenda going till midnight, all of these items you've actually had workshops on, so I wouldn't anticipate. Tonight's about making decisions as well.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further comments? Councillor Henderson, did you want to close the debate? No. All right, we're looking at recommendation 1, and I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against? That's carried, thank you. The recommendation 2 is relation to projects and costs that you want to select for the draft budget for the purposes of developing the budget draft annual business plan. Yeah. And what I can do, if you would like to, is to go out of meeting procedures for 10 minutes. If you would like to be able to talk about the different projects and costs that you want to insert into recommendation 2. And Councillor Schiller, this is where you may want to put in your idea about the consultation plan with the marina in here as well. So it is 20 to 7. I'll say 8 minutes to 7 if people are happy to go out of meeting procedure. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Just a clarification. If we go out of meeting procedures, we can't make decisions on recommendations or resolutions.
No, then we'll come back into meeting procedure and we'll make decisions. But then it's, you know, you've said that you want to be able to speak more freely, and out of meeting procedure gives you that opportunity. So all those in favour of going out of meeting procedure for 10 minutes? Those against? That's carried, thank you. So if Emma can keep an eye on the time for me for 10 minutes. Now, does anybody have any projects and amounts they want to include in that draft budget for the purposes of developing the business plan? Councillor Schiller?
It's probably based around David's, and so if David wants to take it up, but I might have some commentary about in what way it occurs. So if David wants to put what he put up first, and then we'll talk around it.
So David has put in there that council engages an independent consultant to work with Mark Taplin and council to conduct a public consultation process on the Bluff Marina, and to provide a report on the result at the July 24th Ordinary Council meeting. I'll just ask the CEO whether or not that is a recommendation that can go in there, because we're looking at the project and the amount that will cost. So, Councillor Schiller?
Basically, what we're doing here is, if it does go in the draft budget, it allows the community to decide whether we even go to consultation. If it's in the draft budget and they see it and they say, no way, we're not going to touch this with a barge pole, or we love it, they do have the opportunity to keep it in the budget themselves, not us. So that's why I'm putting it there, so that it's not just the chamber deciding on whether we spend this money on consultation. And then there's another scenario as to whether we go with the full commitment of $30,000, which our council has to pay for, or whether we look at an option where Mr. Taplin is responsible for an equivalent amount of half of the contribution to the particular consultation. And like I say, the option there is that the community can oust it, not us, and we're giving more people in the community the chance to say whether they want to spend /$15,000 or $30,000 on a consultation.
Thank you. I might just let the CEO respond to that, because there's various issues in terms of that coming in under that recommendation, I think.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Based on my discussion with you, Angela, today, I had drafted up something which I believe is what you were trying to express, which would be relevant to put it in here now. And so it's a little bit of what you're doing, David. I think, David, Councillor Kemp, sorry, you're looking to do something now within the current budget, where Councillor Schiller is looking to do something in the 23-24 budget. So I've drafted that council provide an allocation of $30,000 in the draft 23-24 annual business plan and budget for the purposes of undertaking independent community consultation on the Bluff Marina proposal. So that would be included in this draft with that commentary. And then obviously it still has to go out for consultation, that our community are happy to have that provision, and council ratepayer funds be there to fund that independent consultation for that project. That's what I propose.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Kemp?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jenks. Look, yeah, I think that's along the lines. Yes, I'm quite happy to put it into the next financial year budget for that purpose. I'd like to have a discussion around whether we include council and Mark Taplin, the developer, in developing with the consultant, the public consultation questionnaire, survey, whatever we want to call it. So there's a good balance of involvement from council as well as the developer going out there providing that one, so they can provide the input into the consultant to develop the survey or questions.
Councillor Kemp, I think that might be a different issue. This one is really specifically looking at recommendation 2 around the project and the cost. So the project for the draft budget for consultation would be the public consultation, and the cost would be $30,000. What you're proposing, we could talk about later on, and you might want to bring that as a motion without notice in relation to how we go about that if this falls into this draft budget. The CEO just wants to clarify something.
Through the Mayor, so I understand what you're saying, and it is Mr. Taplin's proposal. It is not council's proposal. So Completely understand it would have to be in consultation with Mr Taplin. So whether the wording of that is on whether we're referring to it as Mr Taplin's Bluff Marina proposal, because it's not something that council can do just up on its own. It's not our proposal. We would have to do it in conjunction with Mr Taplin. It's his proposal.
So that's fine. If we don't need to put that in place, it's just a process that we follow, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I've got up here, the first part is in terms of project, that council provide an allocation of $30,000 in the draft annual business plan and budget for the purpose of undertaking independent community consultation on the Bluff Marina proposal. Are there any other items that you would like to be put into the business plan? We did talk about the rubbish collection. There was a number of things that we talked about in relation to the business plan. Let's go to an item. Councillor Kemp.
I do have 5, and I'm not quite sure, CEO, do you have got them written already? Because you advised me that this may be a good way of putting the motions.
If you have 5, Councillor Kemp, what we might do is just do it one by one so that council can vote on each of your items. If we come out of come back into meeting procedures, are you people happy to come back into meeting procedures now? Yep. Okay, thank you. So if we do the first one, that council provide an allocation of $30,000 in the draft annual business plan for the consultation on the Bluff Marina proposal. Do I have a mover for that? Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Mayor Jenkins, I'd like to declare a general conflict of interest as my professional role gives rise to a perceived conflict, and I'll leave the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. You're moving that way, Councillor Schiller? And seconding that, Councillor Burns? Do either of you want to speak to that? All those in favour? And those against? That's carried, thank you. Back in. Councillor Kemp, do you want to read each of yours and we'll do them separately?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. The first one, we've already have it in place over the last year or two, but it's getting deferred, which is the Junior Scooter Park. And yes, we have a place for it to be at the Victor Harbour Oval. We were now talking possibly it may go to the sports precinct. We don't know yet, but I feel that the best place for this junior scooter park, and it was only a junior scooter park for about 4 to 8 year olds to actually learn how to ride scooters in safety under the supervision of the parents in a safe environment where there's parking, toilets, etc.
Sorry, Councillor Kemp.
So my motion.
Sorry to interrupt you. I do beg your pardon. Do you mind just saying what it is and how much it's going to cost? And then once it's moved and seconded, then you can talk to it at that point in time if you'd like.
No, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. The council endorses a junior scooter park project with an estimated cost of $150,000. Is included in the 23-24 draft budget, subject to council considering alternative locations.
Thank you. So that's moved, Councillor Kemp. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Quinton. Do either of you want to speak to that? Do you want to speak to it further, Councillor Kemp?
Yep, the reason I brought this up, I think that initially, as I said, a junior scooter park, you know, away from the bigger children and kids who with skateboards and so forth. And yes, we had a public consultation and somehow it ended up at the Victor Harbour Oval, which is mostly not the best place for it. I thought Kent Reserve would be the best location for this to be considered because of the parking. There's playgrounds, there's barbecue facilities, there's families can sit there and watch, there's toilets facilities, everything's there in place already. There's plenty of land in that space there where we could have a junior scooter park for 4 to 8 year olds to learn to ride scooters, and also the design work of line marking would give about education about road safety, etc., etc. So 150,000, it did get blown out a little bit, but generally speaking, it was around about 50 to 60,000 project in the beginning. So I'm asking members to actually reconsider this and support this motion to look at alternative location as Kent Reserve as the primary one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Quinton, do you want to seconder? Do you want to speak to that? No. Councillor Schiller, you had your hand up.
I just had a query about, although we're not deciding on the location tonight, obviously Kent Reserve has been used for festivals such as Red Hot Summer. I'm wondering what the footprint of this particular skate park would be, and how much scooter park, sorry, and how much that would affect any festivals that were in that spot.
We can discuss that, and that will go out for community consultation with the draft budget. We're not talking about location tonight, just about putting the scooter park in the draft budget. Is there any further comment on that? Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, I probably agree with the view that I think that the new sport precinct and then that concept that we've gone out with works quite well for the scooter park, and I don't think that's something that the scooter park would be this budget. So I don't think it's probably best place to include the consideration in this budget, but maybe a later year.
Thank you, Councillor. No further comments. Councillor Kemp, did you want to close debate?
No, just that I think that because it's been on the books now for a while with all the concept, or sorry, the major designs have been achieved and completed, which we haven't seen yet. I'd like to have a look at them one day. The designs, actually, if you don't mind. I'm not quite sure why we haven't seen them, or I may have missed a meeting when that happened. I think we need to get this done. The community knows about it. It's been in there. We have grant funding for it. So I think if we don't spend the money, well, we can't do it this financial year because I think the grant funding runs out in June, doesn't it?
Councillor Kemp, you're closing the debate.
Yep. So I think that, yeah, please consider this as the 23-24 so we can achieve this, what we promised our community.
Thank you. That closes debate. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Can I just remind members that when you're closing debate, you're not able to add any further information to that. It needs to be reiterating what the debate was about. The second one from moving by Councillor Kemp, there's that the council considers including Hawke Road in Inman Valley into the 10-year long-term financial plan and asset management plan. You're moving that way, Councillor Kemp?
I do have an amendment to that, which I've changed. The council considers including Hawke Road, Inman Valley into the 10-year long-term financial plan and asset management plan with a concept designed to cater for a 30 to 50k zone.
And the cost of that, Councillor Kemp?
Around about, I believe it would be in the context of, I did have it down here somewhere, I should have highlighted it, around about $200,000.
Around about $200,000. This is going in the budget, Councillor Kemp.
Sorry?
This is going in the budget. It's around about 2,000.
Or 270,000, and it may be cheaper than that because we are not designing it to a 100k zone. So 270 we'll put in. Do you want to respond
to that, CEO?
Yeah, I was just clarifying because when you said 30 to 50k, I thought you were talking dollars. You're saying kilometres an hour, and at a cost of 200,000.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Do you want to respond to that, Director Hayter?
Through the Mayor. Councillor Kemp, the design, if you're just about the design, it's around $40,000 and then construction is around 270,000. So I understood you just want design in this one and then the 270 in the long-term financial plan.
I think we could try and achieve it in this next financial year and just be put in the actual long-term financial plan for 23-24. But can I speak to it, may I, Mayor?
Yes, you can speak to it.
Thank you. The reason why I put this in, because it's only a 200-metre road, it's a dead-end road off Green Hills Road. Yes, I can understand that, you know, the Department of Infrastructure and Transport sees it as a rural road and any upgrade of that road must be developed to take 100 kilometres per hour speed limit in 200 metres, I think is really, I'm not quite sure if that's really is not the intention of the department to put 100k zones in 200-metre road sections. So that's why my motion was to reduce it down to 30 to 50k per hour zone, so that we can actually design the road at a much cheaper cost, because it's not designed to take the higher speeds, which the road design would, in engineering, would be greater. So reducing the speed limit, similar to the Buff Jetty Road, which was a 50k to a 30k, that was achieved quite well for about 175 metres, around about 4.2 metres wide, and it was cost $5,700. So Wattlebury Road was $199,000, and that was just a sealed road on a dirt road. So I think Wattle Road, for that area, for Hawke Road, I think the motion would be that the council, including Hawke Road, Inman Valley, in the 10-year long-term financial plan, asset management plan, with a concept designed to cater for a 30 to 50 kilometres per hour zone in the 23-24 budget. I just amended it.
Do you want to just add, he just amended it at on the 23-24 budget. Do I have a seconder for that? If I don't have a seconder, it lapses for want of a seconder. Is seconding that Councillor Corimbo? Do you want to speak to it? No. Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Henderson?
I have a question, Mayor. Do we know how many residents live on Hawke Road?
How many residents live on Hawke Road, Councillor?
Around about 6 to 8 properties that abut off, the driveways go off at the end of the road. Six to 8 residents.
Does anybody else have any questions or want to speak to that? Not Councillor Burns and then Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor. In principle, I understand what Councillor Kemp is wanting to do. I'm just concerned about the cost, that's all. Given we're running with a deficit, I struggle with the expense, that's all.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I guess considering, I'm implying from what Councillor Kemp said that it's not in our 10-year long-term financial plan or our asset management plan. I just think there would be a lot of annoyed residents who have been waiting and whose roads are in the asset management plan and long-term financial plan for us to put up a road that's not even in our plans and what we said to the community we'll do, and then endorsing it for the 2023-24 budget. So I'm not going to be supporting this one.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp, do you want to close the debate?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Just quickly, yes, I understand where Councillor Mann's coming from. You're right, and again, it's about people lobbying hard for what they need and want for their community. So the people on the Hawke Road, I believe, lobbied me quite about it. They've been waiting a long time for it to be put on the plan, and it hasn't. So this is why I'm pushing it through. And when you look at the costings, that 270,000, 40,000 design was on a 100k zone, kilometre zone speed limit. Down to 30 or 50k kilometre per hour zone would be much far cheaper than 270,000. So it's a capital budget project, so it's not going to be an operating cost. So I think it's just it's not that. I think the cost will be quite surprising cheap when we do the costings. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's lost. Thank you. The next feasibility study to look at concept designs and costings specific to the Stock Road Ford, an alternative road connection to Spring Road, achieving emergency access to the properties along Stock Road in Inman Valley with an estimated cost of $40,000 included in the 23-24 draft budget for the purpose of developing that draft annual business plan. You're moving that way, Councillor Kemp?
Yes, Mayor Jenkins, I am moving it.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Burns. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yes, I think this is an opportunity. We have identified that there is a hazard in the Stock Road and other areas on the South Front report, and this is an opportunity to look at fixing a problem where ratepayers or residents can be trapped if the water or river flows through the ford where they can't cross it. Looking at alternative routes through Spring Road, etc., is another opportunity to look at in egress and access, through to the Stock Road area of Crozer Hill Estate. So I think this is again just getting in a cost of $40,000 to look at some feasibility study. I think it's a good step in the right direction.
You, Councillor Burns, do you want to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I also support this because I think it's addressing for a low cost a study into a known issue for residents. So I think it's worth undertaking.
Does anybody else want to speak to this? If not, I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? And those against? That's carried, thank you. The last one is that Council include a flood awareness consultation program with an estimated cost of $40,000 in the 23-24 draft budget for the purposes of developing the draft annual business plan. Moving that way, Councillor Kemp. Do I have a seconder for that?
I've got a variation.
Got a variation?
To it. The Council endorses a flood awareness consultation program in accordance with the South Front report with an estimated cost of $40,000 in the 23-24 draft budget for the purpose of developing the draft annual business plan.
Can I just ask all the new elected members, have you read the South Front report? You've all read it? Yep, okay. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Kemp? Oh, sorry, I'll just ask for a seconder first. Have I got a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Burns. To speak to that, Councillor Kemp.
Thank you. Because the South Front report identified hazard areas along our rivers where people in the community can be inundated with a severe weather event, flooding, as we noticed in November along the High Marsh River with Wattle Drive. One of the things that is now we know that these are hazards, and we need to be positive in our action, what we're taking about in identifying those hazards and informing and educating our residents. No different for a bushfire plan or anything like that, how to prepare for an event if it does happen. And this is part of the process that I think Council has a duty of care to do, because the recommendations in the South Front report recommends we do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burns, do you want to speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I concede and agree with Councillor Kemp's comments. I think that given that the Council already has articulated an environment concern, we are likely to have both bushfires and floods, and I think that improving community awareness about flooding risk is important.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Are there any other items that people would like to put? Councillor Kemp?
So I do have one more, which there was no recommendation made, but I want to make a recommendation on the Keene Road Bridge Back Valley. The motion is to defer the project because it's not warranted. So I just say that the motion is to defer the Keene Road Bridge Back Valley upgrade.
Does somebody second that? Schiller? Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Kemp? Or...
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Look, it's an interesting thing about the two assessments that have been done on this bridge over 2017, where it actually said it's 15 to 20 years, it doesn't need to be replaced. The 21 assessment was done and they said 2032. Yes, there's some minor wear and tear on the bridge and etc. like that, but when both reports stated they don't need replacing to around 2032, 33, 34, whatever, which one you want to take on the reports, why has it been brought forward 10 years? You know, I just don't understand why critical that bridge is compared to other bridges in the area. And we haven't actually seen a report, I can't recall, and I stand corrected if I am wrong, that, you know, of the priority list of all the bridges that we need to replace and fix up, there is a list, and I don't know why this one's come 10 years earlier when we could must be spending this money on another bridge, another area which is more important that we should do. And I think if Director Hayter could provide a list of those bridges and priorities, I think it'd be good. But from all the explanations been given to me about why we're doing this 10 years earlier than we should be doing, and the reports, I just feel that it's inadequate to support this proposal of a $800,000 expenditure.
Thank you. I'll ask Director Hayter to send that report of the bridges round, perhaps the elected member update would be good for you. And you're seconding that, did you say? No. you seconding that, Councillor Burns? No, sorry, Angela Schiller. Sorry, you're seconding that. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Schiller?
This is a major part of our budget, and although it has grant funding attached to it, I think in this current financial environment, we've still got a fair chunk in our capital budget, and the bridge itself, there are many more bridges that I see within our district that are in need of repair more than this particular bridge. So because, like I say, it's a pity to lose that grant funding, but I think if this particular capital project is going to be done externally and it's not being done by our own workforce, it's also not tying the fact that we need a certain degree of capital works for our own workforce to be occupied in employment. So that's a question I have, that I assume that this is going to be a contractor that comes in to do all of this work. Would that be correct?
Cassie Hardy, yes, apparently that will be correct.
So as the capital budget bid, that doesn't affect our workforce, and it is one of our larger projects. That's why I have supported the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Councillor Schofield, and then Councillor Henderson, and then Councillor Mann.
Look, I'm not going to support this. There's a couple of reasons, and okay, the bridge might be stable, but what's happened over the years and is continually happening is the changes in our transport. So it becomes a weight issue. So with our tankers, our fertiliser companies, all of those going to larger vehicles, which is a heavier weight, puts a huge strain on this, and it becomes a safety issue for people driving over it. As a council that have a number of rural ratepayers, our rural ratepayers don't ask for much. For these companies to do another 20 odd kilometres to do their deliveries impacts on our farming community because the cost of their freight goes up. So I think sometimes when we're making decisions, we need to remember that we are not just representing the people of Victor Harbor, but we have a broad community in the rural sector that we need to consider as well. So on that, I believe that this bridge needs to be looked at because of the weight capacity.
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Councillor Henderson.
Yes, just to back up what Councillor Schofield has already said, the fact is this bridge is no longer fit for purpose. B-double trucks with trailers get to this bridge, look at the weight limit, and then realise they have to detour. The detour is about 25 kilometres. Also, it is a narrow road. They've made a narrow bridge. They have to then negotiate that truck with a trailer and try to turn around and do the detour to get to the farming properties that they need to get to. As Councillor Schofield has said, these are tankers, they're fertiliser trucks, they are cattle trucks, they're over the weight limit. Because of economies of scale, the trucks have got bigger and bigger. Cattle trucks now don't visit a property and pick up half a dozen cattle. They do the rounds and they pick up cattle from as many properties as they can, so they are often fully loaded. That bridge is older than I am. There are at least 10 other bridges in our rural area that are of similar age. They are all going to need to be replaced in the next 10 years, and we have to start moving on some of these replacements. We can't do 10 bridges in the final year of that 10 or 15-year lifespan of these bridges. We need to space them out. This one has proven to be a problem because of the transport and the detours. As Councillor Schofield said, that adds to the cost of transport. And these drivers don't know what they're going to encounter until they get there. They may be coming from any part of the state with a product that they have to deliver. So I think this bridge needs to be replaced as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I was just a question to administration. If you can please remind me the amount of grant funding we've received.
Thank you, Director Hayter.
Through the Mayor, thank you, Councillor Mann. We have $446,000 in grant funding. And just a new piece of advice that we've just received from the funder is that they are willing to extend so that we can start the project by May 24 and complete by September 24. So effectively, we can change the ratio if we want to significantly. So we could in fact start just before May 24 and do the bulk of the work in the following financial year if we wanted to.
Thank you. Councillor Karimba.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple of questions. How many residents or properties does this bridge service immediately?
The bridge goes from Back Valley Road and links Back Valley Road with Keene Road.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you, and then Keene Road goes all the way up to, I think, Tugwell Road. I think that's right. I couldn't tell you how many
So 10, 15, 20?
It goes
30?
up to Hancock Road.
Up to Hancock Road,
Okay.
I beg your pardon.
All right, so we don't know.
How long is a piece of string?
Okay, I've just asked a question. Don't need to get defensive. I guess the other question I have, does this bridge basically service any previous or current elected members? And if so, would that be considered a conflict of interest?
There are a number of previous elected members and I think one current elected that.
No, we're on Back Valley Road.
Back Valley Road. So 2 previous elected members, I think, use that bridge. If I might be stand corrected, but there are a number of farmers and other people that use that bridge.
Thank you.
Councillor Schiller, have you got a? You've already spoken to this, I think.
It's just a question about the alternate route around Hancock, because obviously the Keene Road Bridge is only a matter of metres from Back Valley Road, but to get around the other way, I would have thought, can't recall, I assume it's coming in Man, Hancock and then back down Keene. I would not have thought that was 25 Ks.
Okay. I couldn't tell you how many Ks that is, but you know it's an extended of the journey. Councillor Kemp, do you want to close the debate?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. We know the bridge has been re-rated at 22.5 tonne capacity, and when we look at trucks going across, and if I heard correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Henderson, did you say B doubles use that road? That's a huge vehicle. And of course, when you talk about axle weights, not the whole truck is on a 10-metre bridge all at once. So the axle weights are really must be a few tonnes each axle weights. But combined together in one spot, yes, maybe 30, 40 tonnes. But again, with all this information that's come out about trucks and times and how big they are, well, there's no actual anything provided in a way of evidence as to how big these trucks are and the weights and costs and how many. And of course, I believe there's 6 properties along Keene Road there, which is serviced by the bridge. So Sproul are quite happy with the bridge. Of course, I may have a little bit of concern about the width of it, but it is around 3.6 metres, so I thought that'd be wide enough for a truck to go through. So to me, again, it's just it's not warranted at this stage. I think there may be another bridge which hopefully will come in front to say that it, is more deserving of having that bridge upgraded. But at this stage, I think that we could defer this for a couple of years for another bridge to be looked at, which needs a higher priority.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. That closes the debate. And can I just remind you that when you do close debate and have a rebuttal, not to introduce any further new information as it is a rebuttal. We now put that to the vote. All those in favour? And those against? That's lost. Thank you.
Can I call a division, please?
Certainly. All those in favour? So Councillor Burns, Councillor Corimba, Councillor Kemp, Councillor Schiller and Councillor Quinton. And those against, Councillor Mann, Councillor Mackenzie. I beg your, did I say it was lost? I beg your pardon. There you go. That's why it's good to have a division. So Councillor Burns, Councillor Corimba, Councillor Kemp, Councillor Schiller and Councillor Quinton. And against was Councillor Mann, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Schofield and Councillor Henderson. That is carried. So I don't think we need that second recommendation that's currently in 9.2 because we've actually covered that through the various recommendations that have been put forward. So I'm going to scrap that. If you're all happy with that, you don't need any more recommendations. Councillor Burns?
Sorry, Meg, just a quick clarification. I just want a confirmation that the repairs in the Croquet Club were included in the budget. I couldn't find it and I may have just totally missed it. I just want a confirmation that it's in the draft.
I'll just ask Director Hayter.
Through the Mayor, thank you, Councillor Burns. Yes, it is in the draft budget. I will find it for you, but it's definitely in there.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we now move to 9.3. Which is the Local Government Casual Vacancies Amendment Act. And I would like to someone to move the first recommendation. Councillor Burns, thank you. And Councillor Schofield, thank you for seconding that. Do either of you want to speak to it? Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Corimba.
Good to have you back.
Yes, and I think I echo that from everybody. Councillor Quinton, very, very good to have you back. I'd put that to the floor. All those in favour? That's a unanimous decision. Thank you. That's carried. Southern Hills Local Government Association SAROC delegate. I'll do the recommendation on block 1 and 2 that you note the report, and the second part is that endorses Mayor Daryl Houston from the District of Council of Yankalilla as the SAROC delegate. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Angela Schiller. And second, either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak? All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. 9.5, Media, Communications and Social Media Policy. The recommendation is that Council revoke the old policy and adopt the Media, Communications and Social Media Policy as provided at attachment B. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson and Councillor Mackenzie seconding that. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that or have any questions? Councillor Burns and then Councillor Corimba.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for clarification, in reading through the existing policies and the draft policies, majority of it made sense. There was just one point I just wanted to clarify. Where a elected member, council member, is expressing and has stated individual views and not council views, in here it says that whatever views we express are not allowed to undermine the community trust or confidence in the council. And that to me is really undermining the ability of elected members to express personal views or comments on any council matter. So we're not, if someone says, look, I didn't vote for it, but the majority did and I accept that, but I don't necessarily agree to it, that could be deemed as a breach of that. And I just wanted to check if that's the case.
I'll get the CEO to respond to that. She's more articulate on this than me.
Through the Mayor, so just for clarification, there may be circumstances where that is the case, where a member doesn't support the recommendation of the chamber, but the council decision stands firm. But when the member does comment on it, they need to clarify that their comments of their own personal views and not that of the council. That prefaces the ability to do that. So it's not gagging a member, but you need to clearly clarify.
Which is fine, and I'm happy if that's the case, but we can still express as long as we say it's our personal view. So, thank you.
Councillor Corimbo.
Yeah, my question was along the same lines, that as long as we express, you know, that these are our views and not those of the council, then I have no real issue with this. Once we go down that road, you know, we're really looking at changing democracy as far as I'm concerned. So as long as we have that provision, I'm fine with it.
Thank you. Any further comments? Do you want to close the debate at all, Councillor Henderson? No. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. 9.6, the Local Government Association Ordinary General Meeting. I'm happy to do it all en bloc, unless you want to do it separately. So the first recommendation is that Council appoints myself as the voting delegate and Deputy Mayor Kemp as the proxy delegate. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Seconded, Councillor Burns. Either of you want to speak to that?
Only to say that I think you had both yourself and Councillor Kemp would add a lot of value to this, and pleased that you both are the nominees.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to this? Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. So the second recommendation is related to the reports. And so the recommended reports are from Garrock, and the way this is written is a little bit to actually tease them out. Are there any reports that you want to address to be taken out? Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. Normally I wouldn't have any issues. However, I feel that we shouldn't be getting involved in national issues or other council issues where it's to do with Unley and Mitcham. I think we should only be focused on Victor Harbor, and I think a lot of these could be viewed as political in nature, and whilst personally we may support it, I think we are going into areas of politics rather than what is relevant to Victor Harbor. So I won't be supporting the second recommendation.
In relation to that, Councillor Burns, what happens at the local government council meeting? I go there as your delegate, and I will be voting on all of these issues. Now, I will vote on behalf of council. So if council support, and these will be going up. So the City of Unley has put these three recommendations up, and I will be asked to vote on them. And the council member. So I'm asking the direction of council as to how you would like me to vote on them. So I understand it's from Unley and from Mitcham and from the LGA Secretariat, and there may be political issues involved. I need your direction whether I vote against them.
That you vote against them.
Okay, so I'll do, and you're recommending I vote against all of them? Yep. Does anybody else want anything taken out of there? So I'll do recommendation 2 now. Would somebody like to move recommendation 2? Councillor Henderson. And do I have a seconder for recommendation 2? Councillor Corimbo. Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to recommendation 2? Councillor Corimbo, do you want to speak to recommendation 2? No. Does anybody want to speak to recommendation 2? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you.
Call division, please.
Certainly. All those in favour, please. Councillor Mann. Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Schiller. Councillor Quinton. Councillor Schofield and Councillor Henderson. And against is Stuart Burns. You don't need to stand, Councillor Burns, Councillor Karemba and Councillor Kemp. That is carried. And so on behalf of council, I will be voting for all of those items when they come up at the ordinary meeting, and David Kemp will also be voting for all of those items if he is my proxy delegate. We now move to 9.7, the Dog and Cat Management Board nomination, and the recommendation is that council support the nomination of Michael Quinton. Michael, you, I don't think, were here, Councillor Quinton, for the brief that we had in relation to conflicts of interest. You may need to leave.
I'd like to state a conflict of interest, and do I need to leave the chamber?
If you have a material conflict of interest and that you get paid for your board position, then you do need to do that. The recommendation is that council support the nomination of Councillor Quinton to the Dog and Cat Management Board. Councillor Schofield moving that way, Councillor Henderson seconding that. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? That's unanimous decision. We'll bring Councillor Quinton back in. Congratulations, Councillor Quinton, for being nominated. Doesn't mean to say you got on, but we're nominating you. Item 10.1 is major event funding request for the 2024 SA Country Football Champions tender. Now, this is actually not this budget, but it's the following budget, so that's actually 2 budgets away. And I'll take the recommendation as read. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Burns, thank you, and Councillor Kemp seconding that. Do either of you want to speak to that?
Only to say that they do a fantastic job, and it's to me a great contribution they'd have, and I'm pleased if members support it.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. We have had this once before, and it was a great success for the community to have the Southern Football League and country championships here. And I think that it brings a lot of vibe to the town. It brings a lot of people staying because the competition's over the week, utilising all our resources that we have here. So I think it's a great honour to have the country championships back in Victor Harbor if we're successful in the bid. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this? If not, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Yes, I think that I agree with you, Councillor Kemp. It was a fabulous weekend and success last time. It brought so many people to Victor Harbor, and in the next championships, I think we've also got the women's country football as well. So that will also be great for women's football, and I look forward to it. We have 10.2. The Schoolies Festival Site Location Review. I'll do that recommendation en bloc if people are happy. No, you'd like to do it one by one. The first recommendation I'll take, having considered implementation of the implications of relocating Schoolies to an alternative site, approve the event to continue to be held on Moreland Reserve for the foreseeable future. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson. Seconding that, Councillor Schofield. Do you want to speak to it? No. Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Burns and then Councillor Schiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a lot of thought and consideration about this. My main concern is that I've seen many large events and larger events very easily be set up with 3-phase power through generators and so forth. So I don't think the relocation is the amount of issues that have been portrayed. I am really conscious that local business have requested, and Business Victor have requested this to be relocated. And whilst I concede the schoolies are well behaved, and it's probably one of the nicest schoolie festivals I've ever seen, including Victoria and New South Wales, I understand that there are local concerns and impacts, and I have to not support this to provide support to local businesses that I'm here representing.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Schiller?
I'll be supporting this. I'll just, in context of when this was first, I actually saw the deputation that Business Victor Harbor put together many moons ago. And at the time, I thought, well, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's just move it to Kent Reserve or out of the town. But I went on the tour that Nigel, I can't remember his last name is, Nigel, the Executive Officer of Encounter Youth. And that was a mind-blowing exercise to go on that particular tour, and the logistics of organising this event is huge. And he's reiterated that they're at a point that, you know, they don't need to be here, and if we make it more difficult for them to put on this event and they decide to take away their support for schoolies will be something that is unregulated, and so we need to consider that we've got to support the people who are supporting the kids who are coming to schoolies. So just consider the factor that if they're not here as a supporting organisation, that it may be a lot messier schoolies in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Burns, then Councillor Schofield. Sorry, Councillor Corimba, and then Councillor Schofield.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand, well, from my understanding, this isn't an event that we actually asked for. And I'm just wondering, you know, has the community at large actually even been consulted about this? It's okay to say, you know, they only come out during at night and, you know, they're well behaved and everything, but there has been a submission by the Business Victor Harbor saying that it's actually, it loses the town money, I think, from the figures that I've read. And so I'm wondering, has the council actually done a cost benefit analysis regarding this event? There are a lot of businesses that I've spoken to in the main street that choose not to open because of schoolies. And I think that if we do continue to have it in that location, then some sort of compensation should be possibly looked at within the ticket price. And also I would definitely like to look at their cleanup process, because I've been down the main street, as I said, during the deputation, and I've seen the aftermath of schoolies down the main street with shops aren't open, and I've seen rubbish, I've seen urination, and I've seen defecation, and I don't think that's a good look for our town. So I actually encourage people, before you go and support this, go and actually speak to the shop traders and go and have a look at the main street after this event is held. There is no reason why this event cannot be held off-site, in the bush, all facilities kept. In fact, that'd actually be better, because you would keep the kids away from the liquor, from the pubs, and from any destruction that may be incurred. It can be a well-contained event, tent, call it a mini Woodstock if you like. It's not that it's never happened before, it's just that we haven't done it, but I think it's about time we look outside the box, because there are a lot of people in town that do not support this event.
Thank you, Councillor Corimba. And just in answering some of the queries that you had there, prior to the Encounter Youth and the Green Team taking up looking after schoolies and actually putting this event on, there wasn't an event, and there were sort of mini events all over the Fleurieu. We can't stop the school leavers from coming down and celebrating, and they were coming down here. You said that you saw that somebody had defecated in the main street, which is terrible. Our residents were complaining because people were defecating all over the place. There was broken fences, there were bottles being smashed, it was out of control. There were lots of toolies that were preying on the school leavers, and so Encounter Youth have come Unfortunately, you didn't attend the show and tell that they had that Councillor Schiller went to last year, and they have it extremely well set up so that the school leavers are safe and that they are looked after. So they will still come even if we don't have schoolies. Councillor Schofield, you were next.
Victor Harbour is an extremely well-run organisation, and I've had the pleasure to do a tour a couple of times, and I'm very, very impressed. But unfortunately, the down pack is the impact to our businesses, impact to visitors that come. We are struggling with car parking at the moment, and some of these events take over the main parking area on the foreshore, and all of those businesses suffer. I believe that this event could be run equally as good in another location. Take it away from the centre of Victor Harbour. I mean, that's the jewel in our crown, and work closely with the organisations to ensure that we can run a successful festival. But it's not right in the centre of the town. The music isn't affecting quite a lot of our residents, and I'm sure the children will still come. And everybody, I hope it'll be a win-win for everybody.
Does any further discussion? Councillor Kemp, Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Look, I can't really support this first recommendation due to the fact that on page 91 it talks about, on the top of the page, given the nature of Schoolies Festival, the specific names and locations of identified sites have not been included in this report to avoid unnecessary community concerns at this time. How can we vote on this recommendation when we don't know what the sites are, the alternative sites? We need to have that information tabled because we don't know what's got. This recommendation talks us just continue where it is and not look at alternative sites. Yet we are listening around the chamber here that where are the alternative sites? We have not been given this information by administration. So it's very hard to vote on that recommendation. So really regulation 18 calls for this document to be tabled for elected members to look at what the alternative sites are to ensure that they can support or not support that recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Firstly, I guess that Councillor Schofield spoke before. I didn't call a point of order, but she did second the motion. Just let that one go this time.
Sorry, called a point of order?
I didn't. I chose not to this time, but she was the seconder for the motion.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
No,
That
that's
was,
right.
thank you for pointing that out.
I guess looking at this proposal, and we've had a number of discussions with the business community and Business Victor Harbour who've come to present to council, and I think that the recommendation 2 helps deal with some of those concerns that they've shared in how we can work better to engage them, and I do appreciate that there is an impact to the business community, and I also appreciate that there's events we run in the town centre that is an advantage to them as well. I think I appreciate what Councillor Kemp's trying to say, but I think there is a clarity. I think having done schoolies myself and also been on the green team for a few years, I can see that it is a big event. It's not just a festival that we run. It's a very well planned, organised event to keep the young people of South Australia safe, and I just think that is probably more important. And there was this festival wasn't something that grew out of us wanting to attract it. It grew out of the need of addressing the problems that had just naturally arisen. And I think that we have to consider that whilst the current location might be of detriment to current businesses, I think there's a lot of future locations that in what our town look like that would cause a lot more impact to residents as well. So I think if you keep that in mind, helps.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. And once again, I'm sorry, I didn't realise that I'd asked Councillor Schofield to speak at that point when she had seconded. Does anybody else have any comments they'd like to make? Got a clarification question, Councillor?
Yeah, I just, with what Councillor Mann said, I just want to clarify, we're not talking about shutting schoolies, right? So we still want to be part of it. We're just saying, don't have it in the middle of the city, and let's move it somewhere where we can facilitate all the requirements, make it safe, make it enjoyable. It can even go for longer if it wants to.
What is your clarification
So I'm just
question,
asking, that's what we're
Councillor?
asking. We're not talking about getting rid of schoolies altogether. We're just asking to maybe relocate it. Is that right?
We're debating the first recommendation, Councillor Quimber.
Yep, thank you.
Councillor Kemp, you want to clarify something, and Councillor Schiller, you want to ask a question. I'll go to
I have a
Councillor Kemp.
question, if I may. We've already decided that schoolies will take place at Wallen Reserve this year. So I can't see why this recommendation is in here.
I'm not sure that we have, Councillor Kemp.
Yes, I believe it's in past discussions that Business Victor Harbor agreed they'll do it again. Why this investigation is going on the whole, because it can't change, too late to change now for planning purposes. So they said they would still hold it this year, but after that, an alternative site may be done. So I'm just, from my point of view, from Regulation 18, if we don't have the list of this, I would prefer to move a motion to adjourn this until the April meeting to get all the information on this recommendation.
So that's a formal motion, but you've already spoken to the motion, but just can I answer, if I may, through the Mayor, you're trying to utilise section 18. So basically that list isn't complete. I don't have a list because there are obviously locations that may not have even been researched. So you may well look to adjourn the debate, but I was looking for someone else to move that formal motion. But that section 18 is if I have information that I can table. I don't have a list.
That formal motion can be moved by somebody who hasn't spoken if they wish to do it. Councillor Schiller, you had a question because you've already spoken.
The question is, if Encounter Youth deem that this is, too much because they're having to move, do we have an alternative to be doing the same job that they are doing? Because I would not comment, but you can see what I'm alluding to. If they are not the people providing this service and we do not have another provider to do what they're doing, what's the impact going to be on schoolies in our town?
Is that a rhetorical question? Yes? Okay, I'll take that as being spoken. Councillor Henderson, did you want to close the debate? No. In that case, I'll put recommendation one. Recommendation one is that the council approve the event to continue to be held on Wallen Reserve for the foreseeable future. Those in favour? 6. Those against?
Call the division, please.
We have a division. Those in favour? Councillor Mann, Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Schiller, Councillor Quinton, Councillor Schofield and Councillor Henderson. And those against, Councillor Burns, Councillor Quambera and Councillor Kemp. That motion is carried. The second recommendation is that Council work with Business Victor Harbor and Encounter Youth to implement measures and engagement that aims to reduce the impact to businesses located in close proximity to the event site and increases local procurement opportunities. Moving that way, Councillor Mann, and seconding Councillor Schiller. Councillor Mann, do you want to speak to that? Councillor Schiller, do you want to speak to that?
Just that I'm fully aware of the complications of the first motion and how it affects businesses, and that, yes, I support that we have a full dialogue with businesses to try and get the best outcome for schoolies and for the businesses.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Does anybody else want to speak to this? No, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. So we go to the festivals and events sponsorship program, and there are 6 recommendations there. 5 in relation to granting the grants, and 1 declining the grant application. Are you happy for me to do this on block, or do you want that separated? On block? Block? You happy with that, Councillor Schiller? So I'll do that on block. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson moving that way and Councillor Schiller seconding. Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to the motions?
I don't think it's necessary. All of the information is presented in the documentation.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller, do you want to speak? No. Does anybody want to speak? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Ms Jenkins. I do have a question. In the consideration by the panel when they looked at this, there was any issues around the fact that the people who are applying for the grant didn't get the full grant application. They can't do their event because giving them partial money most probably is a waste of time because they may not be able to actually do their event if they don't get the full funding. So I'm just wondering if that was consideration made clear to the panel from any of the applicants.
Please.
I would need to take that question on notice, but I know when people apply for the grants, there isn't a guarantee that they will get the full requirement of a grant. So that is discussed as part of the applications. Most of the applicants have a discussion with our events coordinator in the lead up to that.
Any further questions or any discussion? Councillor Corimba.
If I may answer Councillor Kemp's, as a panel member, for me personally, I see the point in giving grants, but we're obviously looking at uncertain economic times, so I thought potentially reducing the funding is more appropriate than taking it away altogether. So that was sort of my thought process for these as a panel member. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Corimba. Councillor Schofield.
Having a look at these grants, and look, it's really great, but I'm also having a look at when we're assessing them, and I've had quite a few complaints from businesses that state that they are not advised of when these events are being run, and it is costing them money in food and employing staff that aren't required. So I thought I think that needs to be included in the consideration on the effect of businesses close by and how you're going to ensure that everybody is informed.
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. I'm sure that Director Pathouse will take that back and talk to our events organisers about how they can be more inclusive of businesses in the area. If there are no more considerations, Councillor Mann, did you want to close the debate? No. I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The Festival and Events Adoption Culture Strategy, I'll do that en bloc if you're happy for that. If someone would like to move recommendation 1 and 2. Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconded Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Corimba and Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wondering, and correct me if I'm wrong, only 18 respondents to this. Yep. Is this a survey that we've done internally that's gone out to the public?
As we would do any other strategy, we go out broadly. I would suggest also probably the smaller number is because we've done a lot of consultation with our community on our arts and culture and heritage strategy just recently, our festival events strategy. So this would have been another strategy.
Okay, so yeah, I was just going to allude to that. So obviously people have a bit of, I guess they're sort of a bit tired of these consultations. Yeah.
Sorry, through the Mayor, if I could just add as well, there was a fair bit of upfront stakeholder consultation as well for those that that provided input ahead of the strategy works, the workshops that came into that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Burns?
My questions have been answered. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Mann?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, throughout this whole discussion and probably the previous 4 years as well, there's been a lot of debate and discussion around providing more events for a bigger cross-section of our community. It used to be we'd have 2 poles, we had rock and roll and schoolies, and now we've got rock and roll and the Red Hot Summer Tour. But as we all know, there is still a decent gap to bridge there, and that was a highlight through this policy. And it mentions about a few deliverables about aligning council's investment in festival and events to attract young families and those currently in the workforce to live, work and visit and support our economic strategy. And I guess my question is, noting all of the discussions and advocacy, does this strategy do enough to achieve that ends, and what specifically does that deliverable look like in attracting those events targeted our younger community and providing a different type of event for Victor Harbor?
Graham.
Wow. Certainly does aim to do that, which is through the mayor, which is why you know, those were adopted. But it is a broader strategy, so there's actions that need to feed out of that. So I suppose it's essentially the next iteration of work that helps to then iterate what that starts to look like. But certainly the goal is to target younger events or a broader spectrum of events that covers all the ages. Yeah. Cheers.
Any further discussion, Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Look, it is disappointing that we get a small number of people providing submissions to this because we do invest $300,000 into these events and festivals, community's money. And I hope the strategy does will actually provide a better direction on how we expend that money, because the recommendation too talks about within approved budget resources. So at this stage, I'm assuming, according to the commentary in here, $300,000 is our budget for these events, and the strategy will not blow that budget out.
Through the Mayor, if I may, obviously that budget will change depending on what events we have come forth to the council to host. So the strategy also talks about not council hosting all the events, so we can become a venue where we attract different events. So each year we will be coming to council with various events and requesting various budgets, and we obviously then need to deliver it within those budgets.
Just a question, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. We will not be setting a annual budget for these events that, you know, if we say 300,000 is what we will spend and that's what we work with, or do we just have an open checkbook, and if we spend 500,000 for events, then that's okay? So I'm just wondering what should we be doing in the way of managing our community's money?
Yeah, through the Mayor, I'd say neither of those are good scenarios. What we should be doing is seeking out different types of events and bringing those to the chamber to seek the council's approval and allocate various budgets accordingly. And so once the budget's adopted, then we would deliver those events. So I don't think setting a limit on what you want to spend on events. I think you need to look at the events in their impact, what they bring to the town, what return on investment. So each event would be looked. Obviously, we will look at what we currently spend, but we want to try and be a bit more diverse in the type of events we have here in the city of Victor Harbor.
And if I just add to that, one of the things, and it might answer your question too, Councillor Mann, in relation to something that you've just voted on, and the Country Football Championships, certainly is an event and a festival of country football that we have decided to invest some money into so that we can benefit for it. And I think that's an event that truly addresses families, young people, and people of all generations, really.
Yeah, through the Mayor, I was just going to add that it's not necessarily about council paying for the events either. It's for council positioning itself to be attractive for events to come to us. And, you know, council don't necessarily deliver those events or pay for them, but we are quickly becoming a site of choice or a town of choice for a lot of events to come to us, and that brings well qualified and experienced event organisers as well that have the methods and processes in place to pay for them.
Is there any further commentary? Councillor Schiller? And Councillor Burns, can you turn off your microphone, please? Getting a bit of echo, thank you.
This is a bit more specific. Obviously, it's alluded to in the strategy with basically regarding with access and inclusion. And my question is, how practical is that being implemented in policies for proposed events, not just ones coming in, but for minor events as well, where people are reminded of those factors when they do put an event on, and whether it's part of the process that policy is waved in front of them when they decide that they want to come to town and put something on.
Yeah, through the Mayor, I'm not sure how specifically the broader strategy speaks to that, but certainly Council's access and inclusion policies need to be married into this so that when we are attracting events, they become part of the suite of things that we look at. So that's again, it's probably similar to one of the earlier questions. It does involve a next iteration of planning or action planning that goes with the strategy.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, do you want to close the debate? No, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Sorry, can you put your hands up? It's getting late at night, I know. Those in favour, those against? That's carried, thank you. The time is 8 o'clock, so we will have a 10-minute break. And when we come back, we can go straight on to item 10.7 because we've already dealt with 10.5, the Newland Uniting Church, and also 10.6, the Sea Rescue Squadron. So we'll be coming back to 10.7 at 8:10. Thank you very much. All right, let's get going again. It's 8:10. Item 10.7 is the Main Street Precinct Master Plan Stage 5 design. I'll do the recommendations on block. And the first one is Councillor Mann.
Mayor Jenkins, I'd like to declare a general conflict of interest since I rent a residence in the vicinity of Stage 5, and I'll leave the meeting. Thanks.
The recommendation is that council endorse option C and that council negotiate with Oxygen on the deletion of stage 6, which is the final stage from contract of the master plan design. Option C, of course, is doing Coral Street, but not doing anything with Grosvenor Gardens, just leaving that be at the moment. You're moving that way, Councillor Schofield? Thank you. Do I have a second to Councillor Burns? Do either of you want to speak to the motions on block?
Thank you. Well, this seems very loud, doesn't it? I'm really pleased to see this because when we went out to public consultation, this is basically with the Grosvenor Gardens is what our community were wanting. And so I was very pleased to see this recommendation on the agenda tonight.
Councillor Schofield, you said that, if I misunderstood, tell me if I've misunderstood you, that Grosvenor Gardens was what people were wanting. This is leaving out Grosvenor Gardens. Is that what you meant?
Sorry, yes, that's what I meant. Okay. When we went out to public consultation, our community didn't want the rotunda moved or anything done with Grosvenor Gardens.
Yep. No, thank you. Councillor Burns, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Only in regard to, not only am I pleased with option C, but the future action plans, the optionals in there, I think are also important and are included as well. So I'm very happy with that. Certainly about the options about the public toilets and the bus stop and so forth. So yep. It's good.
Thank you. Councillor Karimba?
Just had a question there. So we were presented with option A and option B, and option C was something that we came up with, is that right? Not to do anything?
That's right. And
yep.
It's option C is in your agenda?
Yeah,
yes.
No, that's fine. That's okay. Thank you.
Just to clarify, it's not to not do anything, it's to upgrade Coral Street in keeping with the rest of the main street, but not touching Grosvenor Gardens.
Councillor Schiller and then Councillor Kemp.
I accept the community's decision, and I accept that it's come to the point that we're heading towards option C, but in an ideal world, as a person with a disability, I would have gone for option B, and I realise that is a controversial thing for the community, but in the future, that would have been a great option for accessibility, in that it would be moving the traffic lights to a much more accessible place, being further north, eliminating the prospect of crossing across the major entrance of Woolworths. So that particular part of the concept was a really great idea. Some of those right turns are great ideas, and I hope that if the whole thing doesn't get done as a whole, that some of those things get considered bit by bit. But yeah, so just that I accept that what we're doing and why we're doing it, but in the future, if it ever gets to the point that we can reconsider accessibility at a higher level, I'll be batting for it all the way.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I suppose, again, it looks like we're doing Coral Street, but we are touching parts of Grosvenor Gardens by removing trees in a context. So we are touching parts of Grosvenor Gardens. I'm just wondering, with the future actions of this as optional, I know they are, but again, this is something that we haven't taken to our community for at least, I don't know, 18 months. 2 years since we did public consultation on Grosvenor Gardens and the upgrade of Coral Street and Stewart Street, etc. Again, I'm just wondering whether the community will get confused if this goes through that and works go on there. I'm just wondering whether, is it wise that we should go back and reconsult with our community, tell them what we are doing, and we're not touching the gardens, actually be quite explicit about that process to ensure that we're doing it. And I suppose, will we be doing the soil testing to ensure we don't find any contamination after the contracts have been done and have to come back to council for more money. So will that process be undertaken if this goes through? That's the question.
Do you want to respond to that, Victoria?
If I may, through the Mayor. So obviously this is to complete the detailed design. There isn't, at this stage, I need to check, but in terms of the construction, it's way in the long-term financial plan. And at that time, when we were ready to incorporate it in our annual business plan and budget, we would again be engaging with our community, advising them that we're about to go ahead. And that's when we would actually do any sort of cost estimates, because the time would have changed by then.
There any further discussion in relation to those items? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. And can you please ask Councillor Mann to come back in? Thank you. We now come to the Council Assessment Panel independent members, and the first recommendation is to reappoint Jock Smith and Kate Sherlow as independent members and Sherry Getsom as deputy independent member on the Council Assessment Panel. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Burns. And seconding that, thank you, Councillor Karimba. Do either of you want to speak to it? Councillor Karimba?
Mayor, I'd like to say that both these people are very knowledgeable in what they do, and I would highly recommend them to be reinstated as well. Thanks.
Anyone else wants to speak to this? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. So we need a selection panel comprising of 2 council members, along with the Director of Community and Development and the Assessment Manager, to fill the council assessment panel vacancies for a 2-year period. And so I'll ask if there's 2 council members that are willing to do that. If we have more than that, I'll appoint the CEO as returning officer, and we will take a vote. So do I have 2 volunteers to be on the selection panel? Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Are you nominating yourself? And 1 more volunteer. Councillor Karimba, you seem to know the independent members and you've been on the CAT before. Would you be interested in doing this? If no one else is volunteering, we just have 1. And I'll go to the 3rd recommendation that Councillor appoint Councillor Schofield. If we don't have anybody else putting their hand up. So item 4 is Councillor appoint Schofield as the representative to be on the selection panel. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schiller, and thank you, Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that? No. Put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 10.9 is community land revocation on Adelaide Road. And I'll take the recommendation as read. Would someone like to move that way? Burns, thank you. Councillor, who wants to second it? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Before we continue, Director Pathouse wants to just identify a couple of changes in the attachment.
Yeah, just for clarification for members, the motion refers to the revocation of community land classification public consultation report, which is quite a mouthful, which is the attachment that was with the agenda item. There were just a couple of minor errors in that. It actually referred to an incorrect size for the land and an incorrect lot number or description of the land. It's been updated and was distributed with the correct information just ahead of the meeting. So they're the ones sitting.
So that motion was made by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Coimbra. Do either of you want to speak to it? Councillor Coimbra, do you want to speak to it? Does anybody want to speak to it? Oh, hang on.
I seconded the motion.
Oh, you had Coimbra written down here, beg your pardon. No, I did have, just changed it. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Henderson? Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. More of a question and clarity around option 2, which is recommended. So that would be the front of the property, which will be made into commercial for whatever purpose that council may deem. Would it be big enough for a viable commercial site, or do we need to go a bit further back into more of the community land? I'm just wondering what it's pretty hard to describe where you've got the orange and the red, that size block there, which is option 2, my understanding. Is that going to be sufficient for what our needs are if we go to do something with it, a market value commercially or something like that, that it will be a viable piece of purchase for anybody if we choose to do that, or what other options we may have? I'm just wondering if it's going to be big enough. Because once we replicate it, we can't go back and want an extra 20 metres.
Yeah, through the Mayor, it's an excellent point. Figure 1 looks at a larger footprint opportunity, but very conscious that does reduce the green space by quite a bit, and perhaps the ultimate usability of the reserve. The space in figure 2, which is the red and the orange along the frontage of Adelaide Road, both those sizes make up around about the same size as the current house block, which was actually has had a couple of different approvals for commercial uses. So the logic behind that is that if that makes up a site that has been approved for commercial uses before, then it's the configuration there could still work.
Just again, it's just a clarification question again, from your experiences and stuff, that a commercial site which has been approval, which is the whole lot 44 Adelaide Road. But if we go to replicate some community land to make that more viable, 38 metres depth of that land, is it sufficient for a commercial use, or will it be too small, because you wouldn't be able to build anything on it with car parking, etc., etc. So I'm just wondering, is it too small, or do we need to go an extra, 20 metres or something, just to make it a bigger proposal?
Well, again, it's the same size as what commercial use has been approved for, which has included car parking. So it may be that the car parking sits alongside a development rather than in front of a development. So I feel that the size would be sufficient to be able to accommodate something. But in some respects, it depends on what the use is, and if the use is, and the amount of parking that use needs as well. There's still an opportunity for the yellow space at the back, which is also non-community land, for incorporation into something as well. Might be combined parking, might be other uses. So I think there's probably a few variables there that would make it possible to provide for a number of different types of options.
Thank you for that. And just for clarity on the yellow part there, the non-community land, which is part of lot 44 Adelaide Road. So we're not turning that into a reserve at this stage. Is that a plan, or is a proposal, or a thought, or we're just going to keep it there and determine later what we will do with it?
yeah, the last option you just mentioned. So it could be any of those things. So it just it probably provides for the most amount of flexibility for use going forwards. Yeah.
There any further questions or any debate? Not, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Before you do that, I didn't see Councillor Mann's hand shoot up late. Councillor Mann?
Sorry for the lateness. Yeah, I guess this option as well, just to be, for full clarity's sake, is around, I guess, that even though on figure 2 you've got Tuck Reserve as a reserve, that could still be community space because we're not needing, we don't need a, it could be a community facility, for example, because we don't need to do that formal revocation for that.
Thank you. That was another question. Does anybody else have any other questions before we go or want to say anything? There wasn't really a debate, Councillor Burns, to have a retort on. It was more questions, but did you want to close that? No. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We have dealt with item 10.10. We now move to item 12.1, and the recommendation is that Council endorse community consultation on the hard waste collection models as part of the 23-24 annual business plan community consultation. Councillor Henderson moving that way, Councillor Burns seconding that. Do either of you want to speak to that? No. You want to speak to that, Councillor Burns? No. Does anybody want to speak to that? Put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The council receive and note the minutes of the Fleurieu Regional Community Services Advisory Committee. That's 13.1. Moved by Councillor Henderson and seconded by Councillor Schiller. Thank you. Do either of you want to speak to those minutes or have any questions? Does anybody have any questions relating to those minutes? I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 13.2, CEO Performance Review Committee. Receive and note the minutes, the 16th of March. Does someone want to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Quinton, and seconded Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to those minutes? Does anybody want to speak to those minutes? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Oh, 14.1. The Fleurieu Waste Authority reappointment of members to the Audit and Risk Committee. And the recommendation is that Council endorse the Risk Committee members as stated. Does somebody want to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Quinton, and seconded Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to ask any questions or is there any debate? No. Anybody else have questions or debate? Councillor Karimba.
I have a question, Mayor. Vicky Tomlinson, so she's a board member and she's also going to be on the audit committee, is that correct? Am I reading that right?
Yes.
So through the Mayor, if I may, so the terms of reference to specify to have a board member, so this would have been endorsed by the board, yep. But okay. The terms of reference state that they audit committees must come back and be endorsed by the council.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions or any debate? I'll put that to the floor then. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. The 14.2, the Fleurieu Regional Aquatic Centre Authority Audit and Risk Management Committee, appointment of Council Officer Representative, and the recommendation is that Stephanie Ducius as the Victor Harbour Council Officer Representative is appointed. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Angela Schiller, and seconded Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anyone want to speak to that? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. The 14.3, the Fleurieu Regional Aquatic Centre Authority Board, reappointment of independent board chair. The recommendation is that council endorse the reappointment of Steve Matheson as independent chairperson. Does someone want to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schiller, and seconded by. Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Schiller?
Just that it's a good move to put him back on here. He's been through some curly times at the Aquatic Centre and he will do a great job for the remainder of his contract.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to that? Councillor Burns?
Yes, just more a clarification question, please, Mayor. Is Steve Matheson been offered a contract with Alexandra Council?
I'm aware of.
Okay,
No.
that's right. I just wanted to check.
If I may, through the Mayor, I'm aware that he does do some contract work with Alexandrina Council and he has sought legal advice in regards to if and when matters come up, he needs to declare a conflict of interest. But he's not an employee of Alexandrina Council.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Is there any further discussion, Councillor?
On that point raised by Councillor Burns, I feel that even though he may have a legal opinion, in the context, to me, it's he is taking up a consultancy position of Chief Information Officer for the Alexandrina Council and being chair of a subsidiary which is partly owned by Alexandrina Council. To me, I feel that in the public world, in the public image, that's not a good look. There is a conflict of interest there, I believe, to a degree. And for him to excuse himself at various times from discussions. But again, it's going to be interesting the role he plays within the Alexandrina Council and plus the FRACA board as to information that he may come across accidentally or whatever. I just feel that it doesn't look good. I don't think it's correct. And I think that any of our board members of subsidiaries should not be working for any of the any of the constituent council who looks after subsidiary. I think we should delineate that across. I think that if he wants to be the chair of the board, I think he should make a decision about, actually resigning as the chair or resigning as his consultant, because I believe, and I will say this again in another motion when I do my motion on notice, in a conversation with the CEO a couple of years ago about Alexandrina elected member who wanted to apply for the executive officer position. It was stated that any council staff member or elected member cannot fulfil a role in a subsidiary. So here you got the chair of a subsidiary filling a role within Alexandrina Council, even as a consultant, is still employed by the council, has been paid by the council for services rendered. So I feel that, it's too much of a conflict, and I'm not supporting this recommendation and for that reasons.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Any further discussion? Councillor Karimbo?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just new to this, but the Aquatic Centre seems to be in a lot of trouble. Is a review soon going to be done on this subsidiary?
Through the Mayor, and it's also provided in the council report, there is actually a review that the authority has sought. Not so much on the authority itself, but just on the governance and admin structure. The Aquatic Centre is not in a lot of trouble. The Aquatic Centre is operating in accordance with, as it was always planned, to be subsidised by both the councils. But the framework for the authority, it has been through 5 different executive officers. That has been the tricky part. So the 2 constituent councils are reviewing with the authority a better governance and admin support arrangement.
Sorry, what I wanted to sort of iterate is that, and when I say it's in a lot of trouble, is that I think the original business case for this facility in year 5 would be losing somewhere in the vicinity of over 200,000, and in fact it's actually losing about 1.5 million over 2 councils.
I don't believe it's losing 1.5 million. I don't know the exact number, but the electricity costs are far more higher than they were anticipated when the business case was done some 10 years ago. So yes.
And it's been going on for 5 years now, because I know there was discussion, I think, of solar panels being, used or implemented, but it hasn't happened as
Councillor
yet.
Corimbo, could we please stick to the recommendation?
Okay, yeah,
Thank you.
so what I'm trying to get at is, I'm not sure if having someone who's involved in what's going on with this, with this is such a good idea to, you know, and I do notice that it is only 12 months, so I guess that is something instead of the 3-year term, so yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Is there any further discussion? Councillor Schiller, you'll be closing the debate. Yes, go ahead.
In the context that he's a contractor and it has I wouldn't have thought that his crossover with the Florio Aquatic Centre is going to be very frequent due to the style of business that he's got there. We've got a limited pool of expert people within the Florio, and I think that if you start to get to like cull people on that precedent, you're going to lose a great person as our chair. So that's just my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. You've closed the debate. I'll now put it to the vote. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. Move on to matters of urgency. Well, call a division this time, but Councillor Kemp, you recall that if you need to call a division straight away, I was halfway through announcing that we were on to matters of urgency, but I will allow you to have your division tonight if you'd like. So Councillor Kemp has called a division. All those in favour? Councillor Mann, Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Schiller, Councillor Quinton, Councillor Schofield and Councillor Henderson, and those against, Councillor Burns, Councillor Corimbo and Councillor Kemp. That motion has been carried. Thank you. There are no matters of urgency. There are no questions on notice. Are there any questions without notice? There are no questions without notice. We move on to motions on notice. The Acting Chief Executive Officer, Fleurieu Regional Aquatic Centre Authority. Councillor Kemp, would you like to propose your motion?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. There's 4 here. The first one is I move that the CEO, Victoria McCurdy, and the Finance Officer, Kelly Knight-Stacey, not fulfil the temporary role of the FRACA Executive Officer position. Number 2, the City of Victor Harbor and Alexandria Councils undertake a complete review of the FRACA management model, and the findings of the review be presented to the councils at their August 23 Ordinary Council meeting. Number 3, the City of Victor Harbor recommends to the FRACA Board to engage a suitable temporary executive officer and the required support staff from our HR consultant company to fill the positions until the management review is completed and the final decision of appropriate management model can be implemented. And number 4, to forward to the Alexandria Council the decision of the City of Victor Harbor on this matter for their decision.
Do you want to do those on block, Councillor Kemp?
Yep, do them on block, that's fine.
Happy to do them on block. Do I have a seconder for those recommendations on block? Councillor Corimbo? Councillor Kemp, would you like to talk to that? And Councillor Corimbo?
Thank you. Yes, there's a bit of a chronological order of events that took place along here that we received an email from the CEO McCurdy around the 14th of March explaining that she's taken up this role as a non-employee. She's only acting as the executive officer. She's only providing support service of the administration for a set period to assist with the review of the authority's administrative governance arrangements, no apparent conflict of interest, and she accepted the position. Well, the FRAC board met on the 3rd of February, resolved to engage with CEOs of 2 councils to view possible alternative resourcing models for FRACA. At some stage in February, they had a meeting, I would imagine, between the 2 CEOs and the mayors about that process, and I'll stand corrected that in my commentary in the agenda item I said that the decision was made by the CEOs. That was incorrect. It was only going off information I had provided to me at that time through the email. But the FRAC board meeting on the 3rd of March moved the appointment of an interim executive officer, CEO McCurdy, period from 3rd of March to 31st of March, and Kelly Knight-Stacey from the 1st of April. As I said, we received an email on the 14th of March. This is 11 days after the CEO accepted a position to work in a subsidiary of council, which I feel is you can't do this. There's too much conflict and there's certain processes in place that we have to look at. And I think when you look at the role of this position, even though it's not a paid position per se for the CEO, I don't believe she's receiving a remuneration for the position, or Kelly Knight Stacey would. But again, doing it in kind. But again, the role of the CEO is executive officer is to make decisions, can dismiss staff, can do all the roles and function of an executive officer. So she's been appointed by the board, so she takes up the full role and responsibility of a staff member of the subsidiary, which as a CEO, she needs and require our approval for this to happen. Now, where this took place, I just got to find it. I lost the page. That's embarrassing. Yeah, so basically, from the agreement that the CEO has with the council, devote all professional effort to the employment and not hold any position or take any activities which may in a way be seen to be a conflict with the Chief Executive Officer's responsibilities unless the prior approval of council has been obtained. It also talks about otherwise the Chief Executive Officer must not directly or indirectly engaged, concerned or interested in any employment, trade, business, profession or occupation requiring the provisions of services or advised by the Chief Executive Officer other than the employment provided by this agreement, except with the prior consent in writing of the council. And if the council provides its consent to the Chief Executive Officer pursuant to clause 1, the Chief Executive Officer agrees that she will give priority to the duties under this agreement over and above any other business or employment which she is authorised by the council to engage. So, to me, this should have come to council for approval before taking and accepting that position from the Fracka board as the Executive Officer, because it is a staff position. And I said before, when an elected member from Alexandria into council wanted to apply for the executive officer position of Fracka, I advised and went and spoke to the CEO about this and seek her advice. Her advice was that no employee or elected member can take up a staff position of a subsidiary by which two councils look after. So I would apply that to the CEO's position as well, that she cannot fulfil that executive role position because she's employed by this council to do that, and her duty is to this council. So I feel that it's not appropriate for the CEO to undertake that role. And I think that we've been told over the last 6 months or so that staff are stressed with the workload.
You have 1 minute, Councillor Kemp.
Staff, we lost staff. We've got staff on sick leave. The senior management team are stressed out. We've got a major budget coming up, long-term financial plans, asset management plans, all got to be developed and done in there. We're losing one of our key components of our senior management team is Kelly Knight Stacey for that period. So I feel that, we have a duty of care as elected members to ensure that our staff, and especially the CEO who reports to us, actually is looked after and taken care of. And I feel that it's inappropriate that the CEO went ahead and took this approval, this decision without coming to us first, and inappropriate that it took 11 days to notify the elected members of what's taken place. That some with disregard to the respect of the chamber to let us know at least 2 weeks after the appointment was already been made and she took the offer. So I'll please support this motion to ensure that we do a proper process about how this will take place. I'm not saying she can't do it. I'm just saying that, we can't afford to have her and also this other senior management team, involved in subsidiary. I still believe is a huge conflict and not approved. Thank you.
Councillor Karimba, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Obviously, Councillor Kemp has quite a few things. I'm just wondering whether there's a systemic issue with the board. I mean, we've gone through 5 EOs, is that correct?
That is correct.
Right, in 5 years. And like Councillor Kemp said, regardless of whether the CEO has done the right thing or the wrong thing, right now is when we need smart people here in this area in the City of Victor Harbor, and I understand that we part own that, but I would have liked to have seen some discussion about this. There doesn't seem to have been any, and so therefore I'll be supporting the motion that this doesn't happen. But I do think there has to be a review of FRACA, and I would prefer it to be an independent review.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller.
Andrew Baker resigned quite recently, and our board, I am on the board, and we had Andrew being contracted to help out when he was available. And as Andrew retracted from the role, we were without an executive officer, and the board is currently looking at the resourcing structure of the FRACA and how we can best retain a way to run the FRACA that is not putting a burden on the executive officer and the administrative staff, which is currently at 25 hours a week, I think, which has been extended from 19 to 25 hours with Danielle Leckie. It would mean we just had to pick. Now is that we are going for an internal review process so that we're not outlaying, the consultation fees, say $20,000, to go out and restructure how we run the board and the resourcing. So it's pivoting on a pin so that we could get this happening quickly. Victoria McCurdy will be in the role for another 3 days. We will have one meeting on Friday, and then her role will change back to not being there. Kelly Knight Stacey was on the think of the word a minute, the audit committee, so she knows the Aquatic Centre and its finances inside out. So I think it's entirely appropriate, while we go through a very short term without an executive officer, that we put Kelly in there and that we try and get a quick turnaround and have a better resourcing model before the end of the financial year. So that's why we have made those decisions, and I voted for that particular recommendation, and it was seconded by the Alexandrina representative.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Do I have anybody else who wants to speak? Councillor Burns, and then you have a question, Councillor Karimba.
Thank you, Mayor. I have probably a slightly different, well, I suppose it's been mentioned in part. I mean, I applaud the CEO for offering to step in and help out. I'm also conscious of the fact that I believe that the finance officer was going to take leave and has deferred that. My preference would be that there was actually independent review. I actually think there's broader issues than just resourcing there, because they're losing money. And I would have liked to have seen discussions about using any resources from this council, and ideally discussions about an independent broader review so that we can actually understand why they're losing money and how the respective councils can help address that as well. So I think that whilst it's good that people have volunteered to go in and assist, I struggle with not supporting this, because I actually think it would have been better.
Thank you. Councillor Karimba, you had a question?
Yeah, just a clarification question. So for 5 EOs in 5 years, and the board is only now thinking that there's an issue, is that right? We're
I
going to,
don't think that that's right, councillor Karimba, and
No.
that's not related to the specific recommendation.
right,
You keep your clarification questions on the recommendation.
sure.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Councillor Mann?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, I guess a lot's already been said. Just to add, I guess I agree with the views of Councillor Schiller and that she's raised, and I think that in addressing some of those concerns by Councillor Kemp about the involvement of elected members, we have people from our council on these boards as our representatives, so they're there to take note and represent our council, and they're aware of that. That's how the delegation or the ability for our council to work, and we're all on different boards in that respect. I've got no issue with this interim basis for the appointment. I think there's significant benefit for not just Frauler, but the Fracka, but the two councils to have them on there as well for this duration. I don't take the same issues that some of my fellow councillors do in respect to this in the process. Thanks.
Thank you. I might just ask the CEO to respond. She may be able to clarify some of the issues that have been raised.
Thank you, through the Mayor. I take on board Councillor Kemp's comments and appreciate his concern for our staff and their workload. But I will state that it's not about, a couple of questions have been raised, it's not about the Fracka is losing money. The FRAC has always been a subsidiary of the two constituent councils, and both councils are always going to have to contribute to its ongoing operations. This is not a reflection of the board either. This has been a challenge in regards to attracting and retaining an executive officer. It's a single officer position in which it's required to deal with all the complexities of basically the same as a council, as a statutory authority. We have been aware of these issues. There was a review that was undertaken in 2021, which identified some of those challenges. And this is trying to go back and draw upon those reviews that have already been done. The Alexandrina Council already provide services, administrative support services by way of a contractor agreement for finance support and admin support. So we can do that. I think there seems to be confusion around what an elected member can do and what a council officer can do. Elected members cannot be employees of councils or their subsidiaries. So council staff can be an employee of a subsidiary. And again, there's probably a little bit of clarity around, as a CEO in my contract, which you've already read out publicly, is that I can also accept board positions where the board is part of a statutory or not-for-profit organisation. Obviously, after consultation with the Mayor, which is what I did, I believe I'm acting in the best interests of the council. This is a subsidiary of the council. It is not something I plan on or wanted to do longer term, as Councillor Burns has highlighted, Kelly Knight-Stacey, for which I can allocate the resources for her to do that job without council support, was on annual leave, so I was covering it for a 3-week period. And both Nigel Morris and I, the CEO of Alexandrina, are committed to making sure that we can get this Fracka up and operational more effectively by utilising our resources and saving costs for this council and the community. Every time you recruit and train up a new executive officer, it costs a lot of money. And what we're trying to do is find the most efficient and effective way of providing those resources for the Fracka moving forward. And that's what the authority is aware of, and they will undertake this review. And they want it done as quickly as possible so that they're not heading into the next financial year with the same challenges, and they can recruit an appropriate officer, executive officer, with the distribution of those resources, and whether they are retained in-house within either constituent councils longer term, I don't know. The review will identify that for us.
Thank you for clarifying that. You got a question, Councillor Burns?
Clarification. Will the review report come back to both this chamber and Alexandrina Council chamber as well?
Yes, so just to clarify, there was another question. Obviously, the authority has its capacity and ability to make its own decisions, which is why it is undertaking its review. And any review it does of itself or its charter or the structure of its charter, it must report back to its constituent councils on.
Are there any other questions from members? Councillor Schofield.
The question that I have, is it usual for our CEO's employment contract to be made public?
It's not a public document, but I don't think there's any harm in quoting parts of it. There's no issue with that.
Councillor Kemp, would you like to close the debate?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I understand where the CEO is coming from, and certainly applaud her endeavour to, to fix a problem with the shortfall of an executive officer resigning. But again, I'm talking about a process of due diligence about how processes should take place. And the CEO referred to appointment as a board of management, which the executive officer is. But under the Schedule 2 of the LGA 99 provisions bill applicable to the subsidiaries, the appointment of board of management, subsection 7 and 8 refers to appointment of elected members or staff to the board of management, and it generally may require council to give direction. Council gives direction to chamber, to an actual or potential conflict of duty and duty between officers held concurrently. Subsection 7 key points talks about the member of council or staff. Point is the member of council of staff have been invalidly appointed to the board of management because the potential exists for the duties of the two officers to be in conflict, or the duties of either officer required by implication the person's full-time attention. These are the things that should come for the chamber, and I just feel that that wasn't done appropriately by the CEO to bring it to our attention for those reasons, because we need to have this discussion and not at the end of the period where 3 days to go the CEO finishes. So I feel that to me...
Can we put the motion?
I have a seconder for that. Councillor Schofield. For those people who are new, this is now a formal motion, that the motion be put without any further debate. We've got a mover and a seconder. So all of those who agree that the motion should be put. 1, 2. So Councillor Henderson has voted to put the motion. So for us to vote on the motion now, but first of all we need to vote on whether we want to vote on the motion now or let Councillor Kemp finish his rebuttal. We are voting on whether we vote on the motion now. All those in favour? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Those against? 1, 2, 3. That's carried. We now move to voting on the motion. Just wait for Katie to catch up. Yep. We now vote on Councillor Kemp's motion. All those in favour? And those against? That motion is... All those in favour? Councillor Burns, Councillor Karemba and Councillor Kemp. Those against? Councillor Mann, Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Schiller, Councillor Quinton, Councillor Schofield and Councillor Henderson. That motion is lost. We now move to 19 motions without notice. Do I have any motions without notice? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a single motion without notice that to ensure that the meeting procedure policy review that I was advised in the first meeting that we after our election would be occurring in June, and I had planned my leave around that, and I understand now that that's going to be scheduled whilst I'm away. And I just request a motion that it still be retained for June so I can participate in the debate.
Do I have a seconder for that? Would you like to, you've spoken to it, I presume. Do you want to say anything, Councillor Corimbo?
Yeah, I will support this motion. I think it's important that all elected members here are available to discuss such an important thing that pretty much dictates how we go about our business. So I think we should all allow Mr. Burns to be part of the discussion.
Okay. I'll just ask the administration if there's any concerns that they have with it being moved so that all the elected members have all of the information necessary.
So if I may, we're currently seeking feedback by way of a return email from members on the meeting procedures. Actually, no, we're not. Internally, we're seeking feedback. There was actually going to be some workshops on it. It can be held off coming back until the May meeting. I believe that you are not here for the April meeting and the May meeting, is that correct?
Yes.
So we can hold it off until coming to the June meeting, but we are in the process of actually seeking feedback from administration, and then we'll seek feedback from the elected members like we normally would throughout those couple of months. So it wouldn't actually come to a council meeting until June for decision, but in terms of the workshop and gathering that information would happen while you were away, unfortunately.
Okay, because it was originally when I requested the first meeting and was told, no, it's going to happen in June. And now I get told it'll happen.
It's going to be happen by June. We look to have it done by June, but we can delay that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this? No, in that case, I'll put the motion to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move into the confidential items. Item 20. And the first
sorry, Mayor Jenkins, my apologies. I did have a motion without notice.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah, I do apologise.
And your motion without notice, Councillor Kemp?
I move that the elected members allowance policy have reinstated that elected members can have legal opinions up to the value of $2,000.
That talks about monetary issues. So,
thank you.
Are there any other motions without notice? In that case, we move to confidential items, and the first recommendation is that we go into confidence because the agenda item is information, the disclosure of which would involve unreasonable disclosure of information concerning the personal affairs of the applicants and details who have applied to be on the Southern Communities Transport Scheme Advisory Committee. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson, and seconding that, thank you, Councillor Schiller. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. We'll just wait until the gallery leave. Thank you very much, gallery, and thank you to those that have been listening on the live streaming from home. We have got confidential items now. Next 2 or 3 items are confidence. There might be 4 items in confidence, so I'll probably bid you good night.